Good morning, everybody. Looks like we are back. As I told y'all last week on Wednesday that we were going to continue this class. We've discussed quite a bit so far. We are on part 3 of a 4-part mini-series on discussing the stopping of foreclosures. For those of you that missed part 1 and part 2, they are available for replay on both YouTube as well as in the Facebook group for Propelio. So if you are not part of Facebook group there, make sure that you go in and you check that out. Just search on Facebook for Propelio, and you should find the group as well as our business page. So if you do not know where the first and second videos in this 4-part mini-series are, you can quickly find them both on YouTube as well as Facebook. So what we discussed in those previous videos were essentially what the foreclosure process looks like, the difference between judicial and non-judicial states, the differences between mortgages and deeds of trust, the simple process for a foreclosure, the process of due diligence, who we're going to market to, and some of the key basics of stopping a foreclosure. I discussed 12 different ways in the last video. So where we're going to be picking up now on this current setup is the due diligence that we must run before we get to the foreclosure, before we get to the appointment, some of the things that we're going to need to do while we're at the appointment, the negotiation process with the seller, as well as and contracting paperwork. So that's what we're going to be discussing today on this particular series. And the last part of the series will be next Wednesday, where we will be discussing the communication with the banks, the communication with the trustees and title companies. So by the time you finish this 4-part mini-series, you should be very well equipped to go in, contract, and stop a foreclosure. I've got quite a few people tuning in already, so if you would, please drop where you are watching from, how you found out about us, and some of the things that you may have learned if you watched part 1 and part 2. I'd like to see some of that feedback. We're about 2 minutes in. I'd like for people to kind of just start saying hi, do your welcome, say hi to each other, and maybe give me some feedback on why you're here tonight, what it is that you are expecting to learn in this show. And my goal is, by the time that we are done with this part, for you to have an understanding of the due diligence beforehand, the due diligence while you're at the house, and the contracting process for actually getting this paperwork done. I'll give you a list of the paperwork I use and the things that I think you should have with you at all times. So drop in the comments, where are you from? What's your name? How do I get to know you? What is it that you like about this? Just let me know. Lubbock, Texas. Hey, Sammy, how are you doing today? Facebook people, how's everybody over here on Facebook? I've got y'all starting to trickle in. Make sure you invite your friends, share. I didn't get a chance to announce this before I started tonight. I completely and totally blew that. It's been a busy week. It has been an extremely busy week for myself. I don't know about y'all. How's y'all week's been? Georgia. Nice to see you there, Lori, coming in from Georgia. Where else do we got people tuning in from? Carrollton, Texas. Nice to see you there, Megan. Who we got over here on YouTube? Nobody's paying attention on YouTube. YouTube guys, y'all can comment, you know. Facebook's got a bunch of them coming in, but I don't have anybody on YouTube jumping in. Don't disappoint me over there, YouTube. So, Atlanta, Georgia. Hi, Alicia. How are you today? So, I guess we'll go ahead and start in on this. I got a couple Georgia people in today. I got a couple Texas people, a couple Georgia people. Let's see. Let's move on. All right, let's go ahead and get this started. Hey, Lori. All right. Hey, Bill, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Got Matt in here from Florida. Got a couple Florida people. All right. Well, let's get this class started. Once again, if you do have questions, we are live at this point in time. It's 8:22 p.m. Central Standard Time on July, I think it's the 8th. What day is today? I'm out of it. What is today's date? Today is July 8th. July 8th. So we're going to get going. I'm going to go ahead and just get this moving forward. I want to master pre-foreclosures and foreclosures. Alicia, I think I can help you out. At the very least, by the time you are finished with this 4-part mini-series, you should have a fairly strong understanding of what you need to do to get these in and taken care of. So yeah, videos 1 and 2 are definitely available both on YouTube as well as the Facebook group. And then there is another training similar to this one in the Propelio Academy. Go to propelio.com/academy and you can watch the foreclosure series there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just start in on this. Let's see how this goes. So we will start with what we're going to do before the appointment. So when we are looking at the before the appointment part, let's take a look at this. So one of the biggest things that you do not want to do, let me remind you, do not want to do, is book an appointment with somebody on Wednesday and they say, you know what, stop by Friday, and you don't even think about it. You just hop in the car Friday afternoon, you're looking at your calendar and you're like, let's go. And you start driving over there to the house. Show up and find out the seller's not there, the seller forgot, the seller's already sold it to somebody else. I make this a regular requirement before I go on any appointment. Make sure you confirm the appointment before heading there. It is a waste of time to find out that the seller has changed their mind or has already done something different. So always make sure to confirm your appointment before heading to the house. I like to know some of the primary details of the house before going as well. Some people might not agree with what I'm about to say, but overall, I strongly believe that I don't really do the due diligence before I market. I do a little bit of due diligence on the phone, but at the point in time I'm actually going to go on the appointment or I'm about to move forward in an attempt to contract it, I want to know more details about the property itself. Some of the details that I'm going to be looking for is making sure that I know the current owner's name and mailing address. I find that to be important. There have been more than one occasion where I've showed up and somebody that was not the owner was trying to sell the house. I try to get that confirmed while I'm on the phone. I always try to make sure that while I'm on the phone that I'm on the phone with the correct decision makers and that those decision makers can sell me the property. But I've had some people that tried to scam me and, basically say, hey, I'm going to sell you this house. But I came to the conclusion once I got it to title that the person that was trying to sell me the house was not actually the homeowner. It's not often, but I do make sure I know who the current owner's name and mailing address is. I need to know what the square footage of the property is, the age and attributes of it, 3 beds, 2 baths, 2-car garage, the size of the lot and stuff of that nature. I'm looking for the appraised value on the property. I'm wanting to know what the ARV is on the property. These are all some basic things that I'm definitely needing to know prior to getting to the property. I also want to know the area. I want to know what type of area am I in? Am I in a traditional neighborhood that's fairly consistent, or am I going into a property that's kind of an oddball? I remember on one particular house, man, I was extremely excited. I got a phone call. The property was in pre-foreclosure. They responded to my pre-foreclosure marketing, and they're asking like $80,000 for a neighborhood that was worth about $240,000 to $250,000. And without ever even seeing the property, I'm like, okay, I know right off the bat that this is a property that is likely gonna be a good deal for me. It's like 1,600 square feet, $80,000. Worst case scenario, I'm looking at maybe a $60,000 rehab. That's like absolute worst case scenario. And they're offering me the property for 80 grand. I am beyond ecstatic. Like, I'm ready to go. And I skipped over the stuff I just told you about. I skipped over all of that. I'm ready to go get the contract. And I shoot over to this person's house as fast as I possibly can. And it was on a cul-de-sac. And I'm telling you this story because I find it relative to this particular slide. It was on a cul-de-sac. And I'm driving into this cul-de-sac. And as soon as I turn on the street, neighborhood's fairly solid, very typical 1960s square homes, nothing abnormal about it. But the second I pull on the street, at the very bottom of the cul-de-sac, I notice that there's this one property that kind of stands out as being unusual from the rest. All the rest of the properties are your typical 1960s square 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage homes. Well, right at the bottom of this cul-de-sac is this just glaring monstrosity of a geodome. And I don't know if y'all have ever seen a geodome before, but it's essentially a circle that's built into the ground, a dome built into the ground with a front door on it and no garage. There's just a geodome in the middle of this cul-de-sac. I have to apologize, but I didn't even get out of the car. I didn't even go up to the house and knock on the door. As soon as I pulled into the cul-de-sac and saw that it was a geodome, I just kind of shook my head and I was like, man, that was a mistake. Now, should I have stopped for the appointment? Possibly yes, possibly no. But that property was so far outside of the normal for that neighborhood that for me to purchase it, I would have needed a substantial discount because I have no way to know how the open market would deal with a 3-bed, 2-bath house that's a geodome with no garage. I mean, that's just not what you would normally want to try and sell. So I didn't even go to the appointment. But the whole purpose to what I was trying to say is get an understanding of what your neighborhood is. So that way, whenever you do show up, you can confirm that this property does blend in well, know what your comps look like, and know these types of things before you show up on the appointment. So let's take a look at some of these other things. Does it match the neighborhood style? Like if you go into a neighborhood and it's your typical 1970s Fox and Jacob home, and here sits a 1920s Tudor home, or you know what, your neighborhood's pretty well comprised of 2017 new construction properties, and here there is a 1940s bungalow style home right there in the middle of the neighborhood. Probably not quite the same. So you're going to want to make sure that your comps and your neighborhood match the style of the home that you're about to go look at. If not, you're going to need to take that into consideration and adjust your numbers accordingly. But something else is it similar in size to the other homes? You know what I mean? Like whenever I say similar to other sizes of the homes, if you're in a neighborhood that's mostly comprised of 1,700 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage houses, and you've just got this real oddball home in the middle of the neighborhood, it's the only one, and it's 4,000 square feet, built in 1970, and the home, once you find out, you know what, it was originally a 1,700 square foot home, but they just kept making these little oddball additions onto the home. You know, they cut the top off of it, made a second story. Well, you know what? It's properties like that. They're kind of odd. And just because it's 4,000 square feet, don't expect it to sell much more than maybe 10 to 15% over the neighborhood average. Like if the homes in that area are typically $200,000 and you've got a house that's more than double that size, well, just because it's double that size doesn't mean it's going to sell for 400 grand. You'd be lucky to get maybe 230 to 240,000 out of that. Why? Why would I not be able to get, $400,000 out of that? Because it's not a $400,000 neighborhood. It might be a house that's twice the size of everything else around it. And I understand why you might think that because it is so much larger that home would sell for that much more. But my experience says, you know what, this is a $200,000 to $240,000 neighborhood. If somebody had $400,000 to spend, would they spend it in a $200,000 neighborhood on a $400,000 house, or would they go to a $400,000 neighborhood and buy a $400,000 house? Experience says that they're likely going to go to a different neighborhood. It comes with different schools, different amenities, and a different neighborhood. All of that taken into consideration, if the home is that much larger than your neighborhood, you might be able to push the resale value about 20% over average, but I wouldn't consider much more than that. Now, you might have different experience, but that's my experience there. I'm talking a little fast. This is live, everybody that's watching right now on July 8th. So if you have questions, feel free to hit me up as we're going through. I'm paying attention to them. Hey, Jim, glad to see you showing up. Let's see here. What else do we got? Let me go on to the next piece. Okay. Is it similar in size to other homes? And are there any location issues? What do I mean by are there any location issues? I'm saying these types of things because I find it important. This is dealing a little bit more with comps, but I think comps are an important part of the pre-foreclosure investing part of this. I'm wanting to make sure that this home isn't backing up to a dump or a city dump, or that the home's not on a busy road. I want to make sure that the home's not adjacent to commercial property. I'm wanting to make sure that the comps that I'm using are not lakefront comps, and I don't have a lakefront home. You need to make sure that you're paying attention to these types of things, because when you go to contract this property, you want to make sure you get the right number the first time. So just make sure you do some best practices with your ARV. So coming up next, these are all the things that I'm wanting to know before I show up to the property, but I need to know what my numbers are. Let me back up here real quick. What is it worth? I need to know what the ARV is. If I can't figure out what the ARV is, you can use software tools out there like Propelio and or work with a real estate agent to figure out the ARV. But working with a licensed appraiser is also an option. How much equity do I anticipate is in the home? This is an important one. This is one that many people don't pay attention to, but I like to figure this one out before I show up to the appointment. I try to determine all liens that are up on the property. What's the mortgage? When was the mortgage originated? Based upon when the mortgage was originated, and then looking at amortization schedules, I can generally get a guesstimate as to what the underlying loan balance is. I can take into guess that there's estimated back due payments, but I'm looking for any and all other liens. So that way, before I even show up to the house, I have a general understanding of what this person can likely accept as an offer. And if that makes sense, let's just say that the home's worth $200,000. And I look it up and I don't see any liens against this property at all other than the first mortgage. And let's say the original first mortgage was $140,000 15 years ago. Well, if I look at the amortization schedule, after making payments on this house for 15 years, and if you don't know what an amortization schedule is, that's essentially what is the principal balance and the loan balance of the property month by month by month. It's an amortization schedule. It'll just show you principal balance, loan balance, and it just keeps showing you. Well, if I look 15 years into that amortization schedule, I will likely see that the original loan that was $140,000 is now looking somewhere closer to $90,000. So if I know the home's worth $200,000 and they likely owe $90,000 plus any past due payments, let's just say there's $10,000 in past due payments, $100,000 is likely what their home loan balance is. Well, I already know that when I show up to that appointment, if my highest and best offer is $140,000, I've got $40,000 to play around with right there. So that gives me a little bit of understanding of the type of property that I'm going to be showing up on and how I can approach my negotiations with this seller. So I always try to figure out what the estimated equity is on the property. You can also use software systems like Propelio to figure that out for you, and then search for the owner's names. But before I go to a house, I want to get a general understanding of what my exit strategy is going to be. I don't wholesale every property I get. I don't flip every property I get, and I don't owner finance every property I get. But before I show up, I want to get a basic understanding of what my exit strategies for this property could be. Some things like, do I plan to wholesale this property? Do I plan to hold it? Do I plan to flip it? Do I plan to create a finance? Do I plan to go that route? Each and every one of those exit strategies will have a different purchase and sales agreement that I'm going to use. I'm not going to use an owner finance sales agreement for a wholesale. I'm not going to use a wholesale agreement for a rental, and I'm not going to use a rental agreement for a flip. Depending upon how I plan on contracting and exiting this property will depend upon the paperwork that I put into place prior to showing up to the property. I got a question here from Milton. He's asking, if you are trying to figure out what the equity is, what interest rate do you use in the amortization schedule? That is a great question, Milton. What I'll do is I'll look at the published interest rates for the date that loan was originated. So if the loan was originated in 2005 on August 1st, I will just search August 1st, 2005 home interest rates. And I'll get a basic understanding of what those home interests were being offered at that time. And I might throw an extra point on top of it or something like that. But I'll use the published interest rates for the year that property was originated from. So that's how I'll go about that side. Let me take a look and see what's going on YouTube. Got a question coming in over here. I think that's a little off topic. I'm going to try and keep questions on topic, guys. So if you've got questions that are on topic, I'll get those answered for you. So let me move on to the next one. So the reason I want to know what the exit is because before I show up to the property, I want to make sure I've got the right paperwork with me. And I always keep all copies of all paperwork with me at all times. I've talked about this many a times on Propelio TV. I've talked about this on the Propelio Academy. I have in my car what I call I call it my toolbox. Back in the day, I come from a construction background. I've worked in most major trades: plumbing, electrical, roofing, framing. I've done flooring. I've done sheetrock, paint, drywall. I've done just about everything there is to do when it comes to construction. But if you know anything about construction and or your regular job, when I show up to my job, I have tools that I have to get my job done. As an electrician, I need a pair of clines, I need my 10-in-1, I need a hacksaw, I need some of these types of things to get my job done. If I show up to my job and I don't have the right tools, I can't do the job. I look at this as real estate. Real estate is my job, and I have certain tools to get my job done. What are some of the tools that I might have as a real estate investor? I've got short sale contracts. I've got sub-check 2 contracts. I've got wrap contracts. I've got third-party authorizations. I've got wholesale contracts. I've got cash purchase contracts. Those are my tools. I look at those just the way I'd look at my hammer or my drill if I'm showing up to a construction job. If I don't have those tools, I can't do my job. Okay, so in my car at all times, I keep all of my paperwork, but that's all fill in the blank type of stuff, and it doesn't necessarily look all that pretty. So before I show up to a house, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to get all of that paperwork that I assume that I'm going to need. Like, for instance, if I know the property's completely upside down, I'm going to fill out a short sale contract before I show up to the property. If I know that there's limited to no equity, I'm going to fill out a subject to contract before I show up to the house. If I know that the property's steep and deep, I'm going to throw out a cash purchase contract. And those are the types of contracts I'm going to fill out before I show up there. So I have a general understanding before I ever even get to the house, the way that I'm planning to acquire it. You as a real estate investor should have multiple acquisition as well as disposition strategies available to you at all times. So the next piece that I'm going to look at here is I'm going to get all my paperwork done. Whether that be a cash purchase agreement, a creative financing packet, short sale packet. I'm going to get my seller's disclosures ready, my third-party authorizations ready, and I'm going to get authorizations to release ready. If I know that this is a pre-foreclosure property, these are the things that I know that I'm likely going to need. I'm going to definitely need one of these first three. I'm either going to need a cash purchase agreement, a creative purchase agreement, or a short purchase agreement. Beyond that, I know I'm going to need a seller's disclosure. I know for a fact if I'm doing prepared before I ever show up to the property. Okay, but there is more. Some things that might not always be apparent. Some things that I might not always need in my paperwork before I show up to the property. I might also need to put together I might need to put together or have with me at all times potentially a bankruptcy packet. You know, I've built relationships with several bankruptcy attorneys in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, and they have a fairly extensive Q&A that they have. Well, one of the things I'll do is if I show up to a pre-foreclosure and there shows that there's obvious signs of a bankruptcy needed, we discussed bankruptcies in the previous class on part 2. Well, if I know that there's a bankruptcy potentially needed on this to help move the seller along as well as help that bankruptcy attorney along, I'll have that bankruptcy packet in my toolbox at all times. So that way the seller can fill it out while I'm there and I can have that sent over immediately right then and there to the bankruptcy attorney. Other things that I'm going to need is probably lead-based paint disclosures, HOA condo information, leaseback addendums if I happen to give this seller a leaseback on the contract, and heirship affidavit questionnaires. It's often that you'll go into a contracting situation to discover that somebody in the chain of title has died, and you want to get that taken care of while you're there at the appointment. Okay, all of these types of things are discussed, and if you would like to know more about my toolbox, the contracts and stuff that I keep in my car with me at all times, just go to Propelio TV and search Propelio toolbox, and you'd probably be able to find those documents that I keep there inside of my car at all times. Okay, so moving on, credibility pack. What do I mean by a credibility pack? I discussed this a bit in our class last week. For those that are tuning in right now and you do not know what I'm referring to, this is a 4-part foreclosure training. The first part and the second part are still available there on YouTube. Just search Propelio Foreclosure or go into the Propelio Facebook group and search for foreclosure, or go to propelio.com/academy and there's a full training on foreclosures in there. Credibility packs I find to be important. There's going to be things in there that I'm going to keep at all times, such as a list of all of my testimonials. I want a copy of all testimonials from my previous sellers. Every time I work with a seller and or buyer and I buy their house or I sell them a house, I work with them at the title company right then and there to fill out a 5-question survey about how their experience working with my company was. I use those testimonials, and one of the questions on those testimonials are, can I have someone else contact you for your feedback on this process? Well, I'll have 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 of those, and I'll put all of those into a professional binder so that way the homeowners can look at previous sales, call people that have worked with me previously, and get their feedback on how the process went. Other things that I'll keep in that pre-foreclosure packet. Remember last episode we were talking about 12 ways to stop a foreclosure? Each one of those has specific requirements, benefits, and drawbacks to that particular strategy. Well, I always like to keep a written document, some sort of printout, some sort of check boxes that explains what each and every one of those are, the qualifications to get approved for them, the benefits and drawbacks to them. It's a very professional way of showing the seller that you're serious about this business. It's a very professional way of making that seller comfortable with you as a professional. So if you missed part 2 of this, go back and watch it. But I would take all 12 of those different ways to stop a foreclosure, and I would break those down into a very digestible form that I could leave there with the seller whenever I leave. Okay. Now I go through the process inside of my credibility pack. Okay, here's what the process looks like. We sit down for an interview. You choose to stay, you choose to go. If you choose to stay, well, then the next thing we'll do is we'll contact your bank. We'll submit the contracts to the title company. We'll submit the contracts to the bank. We'll submit the contracts to the trustee. We'll do all of these types of things, and it just goes through brain seller. I always like having the facts, details, and stuff like that right there, quick and easy, available in front of me to move that process along, especially with a left brain seller. But I always like to keep, before I go, I always like to print out a copy of any public filings. Like if I know that I got this property off of a notice of trustee sale, or if I know that I got this property off of an appointment of substitute trustee or a Liz Pendens or something like that, I print that public document out and I bring it with me. It just adds a level of validity to it. It actually, they get to see it right there for themselves. And I have found it often to make it a bigger dose of reality. Like, we can talk about it, but there's the document right there that says your home's going to be sold. I like to bring that one with me as well. And I always keep a kind of like a bullet point summary of the state's foreclosure process. I live in Texas. We've got a 20-day notice to cure. We have a 21-day notice of default. And then it's foreclosure time. The property's going to go to foreclosure on the first Tuesday of the next month after 41 days. And it's going to start at 10 a.m. And from there, your property will be sold at public auction. I mean, it's a fairly straightforward process. But I like to detail that out in line. And then I like to always throw in at the back of that, it's like, what happens if the property's sold at auction and you still live here? Well, the next process after that, and I throw this one out there very clearly, and I want y'all to pay attention to this because I find this to be a very important statement. Understand what your state's eviction process looks like. Because in Texas, if you buy the property at auction and there's still an occupant in that property after you bought it at the auction, well, guess what? I'm now going to go file a forcible detainer suit. And that's going to take less than 21 days. Once we go to a court, that's also known as an eviction. In Texas, it's called a forcible detainer suit. Once I go through there, the homeowner must be vacated from the property within 3 days. If after 3 days the homeowner is still not there, I can petition the courts for what's known as a writ of possession. Well, I'll file the writ of possession, and I'll use that writ of possession. I'll schedule a time with the constable. I, myself, and the constable will show up to that house, and if the homeowner is still there at the end of that time period, the constable will remove the homeowners from the house. If that means kicking in the door, they'll kick in the door, remove the homeowner, their children, their spouse, their loved ones, whoever's in that house will be removed from the front of that house in front of their neighbors, and them and all of their belongings will be placed on the curb. That is a very important piece to this whole credibility pack. I find that to be extremely important. I don't just go in there and I type it out in Word. I'm kind of just spewing from the mouth here, but overall, I'm trying to give you a great understanding of how my credibility pack would look. I go through there and I print out a very official document from a law firm or from the state itself. Here is the eviction process. Here's the writ of possession process. Here is the securing of the property. Here's what is allowed to be thrown on the curb. Here is what is allowed to not be thrown on the curb. These types of things really bring that seller that's kind of like sitting on the fence. It's like, you know what? I've got 2 weeks. I'll think about it. I'm not really in a hurry. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do that. Well, when they start seeing that, you know what? There are some true consequences to them not taking action. They start kind of moving their thought process around, and they start like, okay, I don't want to see myself and my children removed from this house forcibly by a constable. Well, that is a reality. That will happen if the property goes to auction and they don't vacate. So let's move forward. So I keep that credibility pack with me at all times. I cannot begin to express to you how beneficial having that credibility pack with me is whenever I go to contract a property. Most of my pre-foreclosure meetings are around 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours, but almost every pre-foreclosure meeting I go on, guess what? I do walk away with the contract, whether that be a creative financing offer, whether that be a short offer, or that be a cash purchase. Almost every pre-foreclosure appointment I go on, I get the contract. And I do believe that's because how good I am at educating the seller, how good I am at moving that process forward, and getting the seller to a point of realization of, okay, I can't stay in the home. I don't have credit. I don't have funds. I don't have this. My best options are to get it sold. And I go through a very simple process with this credibility pack of getting them to the realization that, you know what, they probably need to sell the home. And I'm not trying to convince them to sell it. I'm letting them make their own decisions. And honestly, in most cases, the decision in the best interest of the seller is to go ahead and sell the home. Okay, where do we go next? So I always keep the toolbox with me. I discussed that with you earlier. Some things that you might need in regards to physical tools with you at this time would be, that button. Right? Got too many buttons in front of me. I always try to keep it in my car for any appointment I go on. A video camera. Most of y'all have phones that'll handle that for you. Keep a solid flashlight with me. Even though my phone has a flashlight on it, I prefer a true flashlight because the power of the flashlight's much brighter, and I use that flashlight whenever I'm inspecting the property. That's a tip that I got from Grant Kemp quite a few years ago. If y'all don't know, Grant Kemp was one of my mentors. But I keep a flashlight with me. You'll understand why here in a little bit when I talk about touring the property. I keep a change of clothes with me at all times. I cannot begin to describe some of the horrific homes that I've been in, homes that make you gag just walking up to the house. I went to one house one time that the sewer line under the house broke. And when the sewer line under the house broke, it caused foundation shifting. And when the foundation shifted, it cracked right in half. The foundation was split down the middle, but the sewer line under the house was broken so bad that all of the water was pooling under the house, seeping up through the foundation. All of that sewage water, all of that toilet water, all of that bathtub water was backing up into the house. And on top of that, it was a hoarder house with about 6 cats in it and no litter box. So you had not only that horrible feces cat urine smell, you had the sewage soaking up through the floor into the carpets that would just make you gag. I mean, it was horrendous. But not only would it soak up into the carpet, this was a hoarder house. This was like a Tetris maze of boxes and trash from one end of the house to the other that had to be navigated. You show up to a house like that, not only do you want to burn the clothes you're in, you're like wanting to douse yourself in alcohol before you walk out of it. The amount of feces all over the stove, all over the kitchen, all over everything, collapsed ceilings, that house was a mess. When you show up to something like that, or you have to crawl into an attic and you got insulation on you, or you got to crawl under a house to make sure that something is or is not the way it's supposed to be, you know what? You probably want to keep a change of clothes with you. Other things I like to keep a level with me because I've had sellers try to argue with me there's nothing wrong with their foundation. Well, if I've got a level sitting in the middle of their living room floor and the level clearly indicates that this home is out of level, well, there's no arguing anymore. I can't argue with the sellers like, hey, it feels like this corner of the house is dropping a little bit. No, that's just the way it is. Well, I'll go grab my level and I'll toss it in the corner. I'm like, yep, this house has definitely dropped a couple inches in this corner. Well, it eliminates the argument. Keep a tape measure with me for my own stuff. Like if I know that I'm acquiring this property for my own cash purchase, I'll want to verify a few measurements for me. I might have a little giant on me at all times because if I'm going to purchase this house, I want to know what the roof condition looks like. I'll personally go up there and take a look at the roof. That's not something that all of y'all need to do or have to do, but remind you, I've got probably close to 25 years of construction experience, and not every property I contract is a wholesale. I love flipping homes. The only reason I started wholesaling was because I wanted to acquire my own pipeline of rehabs. So I started going direct to the source for my rehabs. So I do a little bit more of an inspection on a property, especially when I know that I'm likely going to be purchasing it myself. I always keep a 10-in-1 screwdriver with me as well as a hammer and a pry bar. These are always things that I want to have with me at all times. Okay, what else do we got here? Let's see here. Yep, all right, good. All right. So before I head out the front door, I need to double check that my paperwork is printed and correct. I need to make sure that I have the tools that I need in my car. I want to make sure that I have a pen and paper in my car. That's important. It's never a good thing to show up to the house without your own pen and paper. And I always like to bring at least 3 copies of the paperwork with me. One for myself, one for the seller to look through, Kip Stevens just said, keep a drone in your car. That's great, man. I'd never even thought about that. That's an excellent idea. Save you from having to go up to the roof. If you got a little drone with a good camera on it and you're good at flying it, I probably wouldn't be. I'd probably crash it into the fireplace. But you can use a drone to inspect the roof. That's a great little tip there, Kip. Going through here, though, I always keep a backup paperwork, a copy for myself, a copy for the seller, and a copy for in case I mess something up. So I always keep that with me. Okay? On the way to the property, I always want to leave early. I want to make sure that I can get to the house at least 20 to 30 minutes early. Why am I going to do that? I'm going to go through and I'm going to drive the neighborhood. I'm going to drive the neighborhood. I've already reviewed my comps before I started. While I'm driving the neighborhood, I might be able to get a chance to do a little bit of driving for dollars. But overall, what I'm trying to get a strong understanding of is, what do the homes in the neighborhood look like? Are they all fresh roofs, fresh exterior paint? Do they all have new windows, solid landscaping? Are all the garages in the front? Are all the garages in the back? What's the overall feel of the neighborhood? And that way, whenever I show up to the property, I have a good understanding of what I'm going to need to do to this property to make it look similar to the other ones I see around there. True, I looked at my MLS comps. True, I looked at the interior pictures of my comps. But I'm going to drive my comps. I'm going to drive the neighborhood because I want to make sure that I'm making a wise decision when I get into that house and I'm getting it at the numbers that I need it at. Okay? But one thing that I do, and I do this, and I don't want to discount this. I do believe that this is a very important piece to getting the contract. And I want everyone out here to take this as a wise sense of advice. This should not be overlooked or skipped past. Rehearse your offer in the head. I do believe in the secret. I do believe in the laws of attraction. I do believe that all of that is extremely true. And that right there, whenever I go through my rehearsing in my head, I'm going to go through and think through all of the different things that me and that seller might talk about. I'm going to go through all of the things that that seller might say that's going to lead towards a no. And then I'm going to overcome all of those objections on my way to the house. I'm going to have all of that figured out. While I'm going through all of this in my head, I listen to some music that'll get me happy, get me motivated, get me moving, get that excitement going. I know that everybody's probably got that song that they listen to that's like, boom, get you going, get you in that mood. Well, if you've got that song, turn that on as you're getting up close to the house. So that way, when you're there, your energy's up, your thought process is going. You've already got this mental confidence that will show when you're at that house. Your confidence will be seen when you get to that house. If you don't have confidence, you need to think through, how are you going to get through that lack of confidence? You can borrow confidence from someone else. Let's say you're working with a mentor, or you're working on a JV partnership with somebody here local in your area. Well, you know what? You can borrow their confidence. Just say, hey, I'm new to this business, and I understand that you have some questions, but while I'm new to this business, I'm not working this deal alone. I have partners that I work with that have a tremendous level of experience, and that's how you're going to overcome your own lack of confidence. Just get that figured out on your way there. That's why I'm saying rehearse your offer, drive through the neighborhood, listen to the music that gets your vibrations up and going. And then while you're out there, you might as well drop some bandit signs. You might as well throw some bandit signs in the area while you're there. And then lastly, and I don't necessarily understand why this is, but park in the street. I had a Homevestors franchise owner say he always parks in the street because it's a psychological thought process. When you park in their driveway, behind their car, or block their garage door, it creates, for some, a mental thought process of being trapped. So to prevent that, they were taught, the Homevestors crew taught them to stay parked in the street, and that when they show up to knock on the door and step back about 10 foot. So that way you're not crowding the doorway, and that the homeowner can come out to greet you, engage with you, and then bring you into their home. It creates a different psychological process. So take that into consideration and move forward in that fashion. So let's go on to the next slide. Review your notes before you get to the house. There's nothing more embarrassing than getting this homeowner confused with someone else. I'm going to borrow a story from a man that I worked with at one point in time. He said that he showed up to a homeowner's house, and he knew that this homeowner had just sent their son off to college. And he was extremely confident in that conversation. He was like, so how are you doing? How's your son doing at college? And he threw that out there as an introduction to the initial conversation when he's at the front door. Well, he got that homeowner mistaken with somebody else. That homeowner's son had actually went to war and died. So could you imagine how that conversation really quickly went downhill from there? He mistakenly thought that this homeowner was the homeowner he had a conversation with when the homeowner told him that their son had went to college recently. Well, this was not that homeowner. This homeowner's son had recently, in the last couple of years, was in Iraq and got killed. That, by all means, completely destroyed that meeting. So review your notes. Anytime you're on the phone with the seller, take what we're going to call rapport notes. What do I mean by rapport notes? Do they have a dog? Do they have kids? What are some of the stories they told you about the house? When did they buy the house? Who lived in the house? All of those things are little rapport building things, and you should keep those in your notes. And before you walk up to that front door, take a moment in your car, flip your notes open and say, okay, they've got a Chihuahua, they've got 2 kids that have grown up and moved on, they've got some memories here of doing X, Y, Z. These are all things that will help you relate to the seller and help the seller remember you, and it'll build that rapport. Rapport will buy more money than houses ever will. So keep all of those things in mind. Let me scroll over here real quick. Gregory Ray is asking, where do we get subject to contracts without paying a real estate attorney? You're either going to pay a real estate attorney or you're going to pay a plaintiff's attorney. You need to figure out which one you want to do. I would strongly recommend paying your attorney. You can find subject to contracts on Google. I strongly advise against that. You may have a local mentor that has subject to attorneys. That is a good place to start. I would then take those and take them to an attorney, though. What I'm trying to strongly say is that state to state, subject to contracts change. And I've gotten off topic, but since it was asked, I need to stay on topic. But you're either going to pay your attorney or you're going to pay somebody else's attorney. You need to decide who you're going to pay. Yeah, with all the different types of contracts, what will you do? So Matt's asking, I mentioned all those contracts earlier, the creative financing contract. I mentioned the sub-2 contract. I mentioned a short sale and a bankruptcy packet. Those contracts took me about 5 years to accumulate over time. That wasn't something that just came out of the gate and I had. So if you're watching right now and you're seeing me talk about some of these things that I use in my process, remember, this was a 5-year plan. This was a 5-year process that I went through. And just because you don't have a subject to contract when you show up to the appointment doesn't mean you don't go to the appointment. That doesn't mean you don't discuss terms. But if they're willing to work with you on terms, and my guess is that if you don't have a terms contract, you've never done terms before, you might want to find somebody local in your market and or nationally that is a solid subject to mentor, creative financing mentor, and work with them. I have personally worked with Grant Kemp. He was my mentor. I'd get no kickbacks by referring people over to them. I get no JV agreements. I get no affiliate agreements. Anything you ever hear me talk about on Propelio is because I believe in it. I get absolutely 0 affiliate commissions from anyone. So for that to be said, if you want some contracts, I know that Grant Kemp has contracts available on creativecashflow.com. I know that he offers mentoring, and I know that he offers all of that for like an annual subscription of like $1,500. For $1,500, you get the contracts, you get access to a weekly coaching call, all of those types of things. I've got another question coming in from Matt. Let me rephrase this. What if you're a new investor with no credibility or enough contract for the different strategies you will approach the seller? If you don't have the knowledge or the contracts for all the different strategies, focus on the strategy that you do have a contract for. Focus on the strategy that you do have experience in. And if you have no experience, then focus on the strategy that you have the most knowledge on. Now, for you to gain confidence, and I think I've already answered this, JV with another investor in the real estate industry. Do your due diligence on that person. Make sure that that person is somebody that's credible and has the experience that you're seeking, so you can learn from somebody that is in a position to teach you what you want to know. One of the biggest things I look at is like, if I'm aspiring to XYZ type of lifestyle, is the person that I'm choosing to partner with have that type of lifestyle? And if they do, then they've probably got the knowledge to help get me to that lifestyle. If they don't have that lifestyle, they might not have the ability to coach me into that lifestyle. Okay, so JV with somebody. So when you do show up on that appointment and they're like, hey, have you ever bought a house before? Don't lie to them. Be like, no, I've never bought a house before, but I'm not here for myself. I'm here with a partnership, and my partner has bought tons and tons of houses, and I'm just here to handle the paperwork for them because they're so busy. I'll do that type of stuff. All right. All right. I think I've got all of the questions answered on YouTube. I think I've got all the questions. Let me see. I got one coming in. I've got Maurice Waller asking, so you can't just use a regular TREC for sub-2 deals and write in special provisions what you're doing? Maurice, no. I don't know what state you're in. I'm assuming you're in Texas because you're asking about the TREC. I do use the TREC for a subject to contract, but I have a 19-page addendum that goes with it. So no, I don't write them in the special provisions. There are 19 pages of addendums for my subject to contract. Okay. All right, so I'm going to keep moving forward. All right, so I got on some sidetracks, but remember, this is one of the benefits to watching this class live is I'm going to answer your questions. I'm going to be here to answer your questions. So let's move forward and take a look at the next step. Okay, review your notes. I mentioned that to you. You don't want to make that mistake, but we're at the house now. We're knocking on the door and the seller shows up to open the front door. What am I going to do from here? How am I going to move forward with this process from here? I always want to build the relationship first. Always, always, always build the relationship first. I've said this more than once that building rapport will buy more houses than money ever will. I hold that wholeheartedly. And my initial showing up to the house isn't immediately, hey, show me the house, walk me through the house. I normally want to just kind of sit down and start understanding the seller's needs, start opening up that pathway, start creating that information, start creating that relationship. Hey, tell me a little bit about your situation. What's going on here? And I'm just going to sit down and let this person talk and talk and talk. That might take me a half hour right off the bat of just letting the person talk. By letting that person talk, I will start revealing some of their concerns, some of their objections, some of their stuff, some of the things that I discussed in part 2 of this series. I know from my own experience that money is not always the most important thing here. There's going to be other fears. There's going to be other concerns. And if I do a good job of revealing dollars behind on payments, you know what? They're $6,000 behind on payments and they're about to lose a house that they've been making payments on for 18 years. That is a sad situation. Well, I know they're behind $6,000 while I'm touring the house and we're going through the garage. The garage is packed full of stuff, but I see a bunch of stuff buried on top of a car and that car's got a car cover on it. And I'm curious. I'm a car guy. I want to know what kind of car this is. I'll ask the homeowner, hey, what kind of car do you got sitting here? What? That's a 1971 Mach 1 Mustang with a 351 Cleveland in it that's only got 19,000 original miles on it? Tell me a little bit more about that car that's just sitting here. Well, that's my husband's car. He died 25 years ago, and it's just sat in the garage ever since. It was his baby's. It's always been his favorite car. And I'll ask the question. I'll say, well, I know that this isn't probably what you wanted to do, but have you ever considered selling the car? I know that you're about to lose this house and you've got the ability to make your payments moving forward. You're just $6,000 behind and you can't catch up on it. Have you considered possibly selling this car or something else of value that you might have to catch up your payments so you don't lose your house? I know whenever it comes to looking at this, you know, would you rather lose the house or would you rather lose the car? And if you'd rather lose the house, I can understand that. You know, some things like that car could have a lot of sentimental value to you. But if, you know, having a place to live like this home is more important, why have you considered selling the car? And if you have, I might even consider buying the car from you. Would you be willing to sell me the car? So there's ways of working this through. And that was just like one example of by building that and opening that relationship up first and then exploring the property second, it kind of gives you an edge on how to tailor that conversation while you're moving through the house. Okay. So as we move forward, tools to review. Let me see here. There is some things like neurolinguistic programming, as well as mirroring and modeling techniques, which is an NLP tactic that I find to be extremely beneficial whenever I'm working with a homeowner. Now, I'm not using this to manipulate the homeowner. I'm not using this to cause, how do I say that? I'm not using this to manipulate the person. I'm not. I am using this to build rapport as fast as I possibly can, and I'm using this to speak with the seller in the way that they need to be spoken to. I love how Grant Kemp puts that. You know what? Let me give you some examples. You've probably seen me use these examples before in the past, but now that you've been on this particular live call with me here for close to 50 minutes, you've gotten accustomed to my body language. You've gotten accustomed to the speed at which I speak and the speech patterns that I use. As you notice, I'm leaning forward a lot. I've got my hands crossed. You know what? If you're familiar with a book out there known as What Every Body Is Saying, I recommend you all read that book. Excellent book. It's about body language. What is my body language even sitting here saying? You know what? If I wanted to break it down for you, my arms crossed over my chest is a sign of being uncomfortable. For those of you that don't know, I'm extremely camera shy. I am extremely nervous about being live. Well, you know what? My body language is revealing that right now. Here I am closed off and trying to protect myself. I'm hunched over. Well, if you understand some of that body language when you're working with a seller, you might get some understanding as to what they're going through. But you've also seen the pace at which I've been communicating. What happened if I slowed everything really slow? I dropped my tone and I really started moving at a slower, more monotone pace. If I move through in this type of fashion and I'm continually speaking like this, I, as the person that's on the property looking to contract this house, I would likely mimic the seller's tone and speed of speech. That is called mirroring and modeling. Now, if I'm talking to a seller that talks at a much faster pace, something like I do at this current speed, I would probably get very annoyed with that. If that seller would probably get really annoyed with me if I talked really slow and I was just really slow in my speech patterns, very slow to respond. You know what? It's in your best interest to model the speed and pitch of the seller's voice to create a speech pattern that seller is comfortable with. You are speaking with them in a way that they like to be spoken to. And by doing that, you will increase the probability of being able to help that seller. Some other mirroring and modeling techniques. It's like, okay, as you can see as I'm sitting here right now, my arms are crossed, I'm sitting here like this and I'm leaned over on the table. Well, if I'm sitting at a table with a seller and I see that this pattern is closed off and leaning forward, I'm going to mimic that. I too am going to cross my arms, lean forward, and have that conversation. And then casually through that conversation, you know what? If they're leaning forward like this, I might lean back. I might kick back like this and sit like this for a moment. And as I sit back and I look like this for a moment, I'm going to give it 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, and I'm going to see if the seller responds. If the seller responds in a similar fashion, mirror. And then if the person mirrors me when I break it, that's telling me the rapport has been built. So these are just some things that you can look into that might help you out with your contracting process. But by all means, mirroring and modeling is one of the things that I consider to be a very big advantage to building rapport with your sellers. Okay? So next slide. Are they right or left-brained? I know that Grant Kemp and I, over the last several weeks, spoke heavily on this. Head, heart, gut. Left, right brain people. That taken into consideration, if you want to get in depth on this conversation, go out there to YouTube or the Facebook Propelio group and just search those two spaces for Propelio negotiations. And these are two videos that Grant Kemp and I put out over the last couple months, and they dig in deep to the left-right brain thought process. If you are approaching a seller that is a right brain and you are speaking to them with a left brain thought process, your ability to contract that property is really going downhill every second you open your mouth. If you are speaking to a left brain person with a right brain thought process, your ability to contract that process is doing this every second you open your mouth. Okay? You need to quickly be able to understand the difference between a left and a right brain thought process, and you need to be able to quickly change the way you are speaking to tailor your conversation to the tonality and speech patterns that person is requiring to understand how to work with you. You are doing an advantage to the seller by doing this because you're speaking to them in such a way that they understand. You know, if I'm speaking to you in Spanish and all you speak is English, we're not going to get down the road. It's the exact same thing right here. If I'm speaking to a left brain person in a right brain thought process, there's nothing going to happen. If I'm speaking to a right brain person with a left brain thought process, nothing is going to happen. So know how to identify these things and shift yourself to accommodate, okay? So let me take a look here real quick. Let me see if I got any questions coming in from either channel. No questions coming in that I see so far. Everybody, if you're enjoying this content so far, remember this is free. 110%. No one's had to pay to be here. With that taken into consideration, do you feel like you're getting some value out of this free content? You know, drop some comments in here saying, hey, you know what? Thank you, Propelio. Thank you for teaching me this. Thank you for taking your time on a Wednesday afternoon to help me get to where I want to be in my financial process. Okay? If you think it was really worthwhile, go out and share it with your friends. Tell your friends about this content. This is recorded so they can go back and watch this. Okay? You know, help me out by helping you. Okay? So moving on to the next part, left and right brain people. Okay? touring the property, it's best to walk through with the seller. Sometimes I'll approach the seller and I'll be like, hey, can I take a look through the property? And the seller's response will be, yeah, go for it. Just go ahead and take a look around. I'm going to stick around here. I don't accept that. I'll be like, I'd rather you walk through with me because I'm going to have some questions as we go through that I'd like some feedback on. This will give me the ability to move through and gain some additional insight into the property itself, but as well as give me more opportunity to keep that rapport building process going. Okay. Let's see what's next. Ooh, all right. Getting tired over here. Let's see here. Building your rapport while going through this property. I'm going to go through, find something to compliment or connect with. I keep taking these rabbit trails. If y'all are liking the rabbit trails, let me know. But whenever I see something that triggers a thought process, I take some time to comment on it. Find something to compliment or connect with. For everybody that's watching, and for the 4 of y'all out of the 90 or so of y'all that are watching, for the 4 of y'all that paid attention and said thank you all. For the 4 of y'all, thank you for appreciating that. Find something to compliment or connect with. Why? Why? Let me go down 2 different thought processes. I have seen real estate investors walk into a house, and the only thing they have done at the entire time they're at the house is trash it. Oh man, this place is jacked up, man. I've got to completely redo this. This flooring looks like crap. I can't believe that this bedroom was painted pink. I can't stand this. All of that trim's got to come down. This looks like crap. I'm going to have to spend so much money. I got to do this. I got to do that. I consider that approach to a seller absolutely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. There is absolutely no chance at all that you should ever go through a property in that fashion. I actually prefer to take the exact opposite approach. Now, let me explain to you why. Okay? Let me explain to you why. As I mentioned earlier, real estate investor walks into the room and is like, oh my God, I can't believe you painted this pink. That I've got to change that. You painted the wall sockets, you painted over everything. I got to change this. Imagine the memories that you just shit on with that seller. That seller, for her daughter's 7th birthday, painted that bedroom for her daughter because her daughter's favorite color was pink. And just that simple statement of, I can't believe you painted this room pink. I got to repaint this. All you did was tell that seller that her memories were bullshit. Okay? So I never speak on something like that. Remember earlier I said, I got to go through, I got to tear all this trim out. Well, what you may have not thought of is that seller, that was their favorite trim. That seller spent, 2 weekends putting all that trim up with their dead husband. Bam. You just jacked your rapport all up. Never, ever, ever walk through a house and just start nitpicking. I always do the exact opposite. I always try to find at least one thing in that house that I can resonate with and truly say, I love this, even if it's not a part of the house. I'll find something like a piece of furniture, some sort of memorabilia that I see sitting around the house, something that I can connect with and talk with about the seller. But I always try to find something in the house that's like, oh, I really like these I like these arched doorways. They're always really nice. They add a little bit of a design to the house, and I've always liked them. Or I like how open this kitchen is. This is going to be really nice. I'm going to like remodeling this kitchen. Always do something like that. The sellers know that their foundation's jacked up. The sellers know that the flooring needs to be replaced. The seller knows that the paints need to be done. I don't need to talk about that. Okay? But while I'm going through the house, I'm going to find something to make some comments on that I really like. I'm always going to work on building towards my offer. Take detailed notes and photos for my files. I want to make sure that I'm doing that. I want to take pictures of everything. I want to take a video of everything. Okay? Always look for clues behind the seller's motivation. While all this conversation's talking, you know what, they might say something like, yeah, man, we started having foundation problems a couple years ago, but my hours got cut back at work. And then right after the divorce, well, I didn't even know there was a divorce. There was a divorce 2 years ago. Okay. Some of all this type of stuff is going in. So these are some things to think about. But here's a little tip. And this is why I told you to have that flashlight with you. Grant Kemp's the one that taught me this. While I'm going through the house, every room that I'm in, I'm going to use that flashlight and I'm just going to shine that flashlight around and I'm going to hold a pause on anything that I see that is wrong. I'm not going to say anything about it. I just like say I see a crack above a window. I'm going to hold my light on that I'm going to hold my flashlight on that crack for just a little bit longer. Who's in that room with me though? The seller. The seller sees me looking at that crack. The seller sees me point my flashlight at the crack. I don't need to notate that it's there. The seller knows that it's there. I know that it's there. The seller sees that I see that it's there. I don't need to talk about it anymore. You know what? I'll go through or I'll see something I'll have a question on. I'll see a ceiling fan missing or something. I'll point up at it and I'll be like, what happened to the ceiling fan? Oh, my kids were jumping on the bed and one of them jumped a little high and got their head popped on the ceiling fan. It broke and we took it down. All right, well, there's an answer. You know what? It'll just give you the opportunity to get these types of things going. You know what? If I point the flashlight at a crack, something I might be able to do is like, hey, have you got an estimate done for getting this repaired? You know what? I'll get a yes. I'll get a no. I'll do those types of things. I'll get those kinds of things back out of the seller. And all of this is allowing me to get this conversation moving, keeping this conversation going, and looking for signs of objections. What's going on here? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. Touring the property, flashlight issues. I think I just spoke on that. Questions plus issues. I do like to ask open-ended questions, like I just said. Have you ever quoted this repair? That's a very good way of getting that seller down the thought process of how much is it going to cost to fix this house. Okay, I'm working my way through this offer. Remember earlier I said, as I'm touring this property, I'm building towards my offer. Well, asking these questions like, have you ever quoted this repair, is a great way for the seller to start thinking through, yeah, that's going to cost money. No, I don't know how much it is. I know that I don't have enough to fix it though. So, okay, I know that that's going to have to be fixed. Okay, I know that that's going to have to be fixed. And while they watch my flashlight move around this house, they're going to start going through their own head and like, oh yeah, I completely forgot that I got that window unit in that room because it gets hot over there. Or, oh yeah, I forgot that, we bypassed the hot water heater. I've just been used to it for so long. These types of things start being registered in the seller's mind as we're walking through the house. As we're walking through the house, the seller, without me even mentioning it, is starting to make a checklist in their head of, oh yeah, there's that problem, there's that problem, there's that problem, there's that problem. All of that makes sense, and I really hope that it does, okay? So, next slide. Okay, time for business. This is where it's like, okay, we spent a half hour talking, we spent another 20, 30 minutes walking the house. I've already been here for an hour. Now it's time to really sit back and figure out what the next step of this process is going to be, okay? Find a quiet place for us both to talk. I don't want some place where there's a lot of noise going on. There's a lot of distraction. There's a lot to take the seller's mind off of things. Like if we're in the living room, I'll politely ask the seller, do you mind if we turn off the TV? I'm a little hard of hearing. That's true. I'm not lying to the seller. I do struggle hearing at times. You know what? I want to sit down with the seller and get something where I can have their full attention. Okay? The next step in that is listen. So many people, I almost said F up. So many people screw up their negotiations because they listen with their mouth. That is the worst way to go through this process. Truly sit down with the intention of listening to what the seller has to say. This will open up the doors to what you need to be thinking on in regards to what do I have to do to make all of the seller's needs satisfied so that they feel comfortable with moving forward with the sale of this property. So Shannon Brooks just asked a question. I don't necessarily know that this is relative to the current live broadcast, but she's asking, I'm working with a seller that will not allow me to view the inside. He has a tenant that lives there. Should I make an offer on a property I have not seen the inside of? Shannon, yes, I would still make the offer. I'm going to tell the seller, it's like, okay, tell me everything you could possibly know that is wrong with this property. Okay. Based upon what you're telling me and my inability to see there, I'm going to make my offer at this point. Now, this offer might be able to go up. It might need to go down based upon a thorough inspection. But I cannot buy this property absent an inspection. I have to have an inspection. I'll have an inspector come out there with me and view the property. But, absent being able to see it, I'm going to need to pad my offer a little bit. So I might have been able to do 70, but this time around I'm going to have to do no more than 58 because I can't see inside of it. But I'll send you the contract. But once we do go under contract, I have to see the inside of the home. So go ahead and get the contract signed, but make sure that the contract is signed with the contingency of a walkthrough on the property. If he still refuses to do that, then I would pad my offer so low and put some sort of potential contingency or reserves on there. So that's a question best asked at a different time. but I tried my best to answer it as best as I could for you while I was here. Okay, so I'm going to ask open-ended questions and listen. Listen, 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 listen. Okay, try to determine and focus on their needs. Acknowledge their emotions, memories, problems, and fears. We're not gonna beat around the bush about this. We're here to make money. I will never deny that to a seller. My first and major priority on this. Sorry, got distracted for a second. Shannon, I get your point there. So my apologies on that side. I see where you're coming from. So on that note, though, focus on their needs. My goal is obviously to make cash in some form or fashion if I can. I'm not going to be unethical about it. I'm not going to lie to the seller to do it. But my goal at this property is to make money. And I'll disclose that to sellers. Like, I'll do everything I can possibly do to help you, but I have to make money on this. I can't do this for free. This is how I support my friends and family. I have to make an income off of this. With that to be said, though, when you are sitting down with the seller, remember what are their needs. Quit thinking about you. Quit thinking about you. Quit thinking about you. Focus on what are their needs. And if you focus on what their needs are, then work through trying to figure out exactly how you are going to move through solving their problem. Okay? You're not going to know what problems to solve until you've figured out their needs. So acknowledge their emotions. All right, they're sitting down. You can tell through their body language. You can tell through their speech patterns. You can tell through little key words that they've mentioned throughout this phone call that they are scared. Acknowledge it. Bring it to the table. It's like, hey, I can tell that you're a little bit scared about this process. Can you give me some understandings of some of the things that are causing a little bit of fear? And most often they're going to kind of open up with a little bit of defense. It's like, oh, I'm not scared, but this does have me a little bit worried, this, or this. Well, by being direct and addressing the emotions that I'm feeling or seeing or even being told, by addressing those, asking about those, you will open the opportunity up for the seller to express their emotions and give you a better understanding of what it is that is keeping them on the limb. What's holding them back on this. So I try to determine their emotions, their memories, and problems and fears. Here's another story. Okay, sitting down with a homeowner at the kitchen table. And this homeowner has lived in the house for every bit of 15 to 20 years, 30 years. They've taken out a home equity loan and they're about to lose it. 30 years in a house. They raised their children in that house. They went through their marriage in this house. The amount of memories that have been made in this house are astronomical. Could you imagine that one of the biggest, unescapable issues that this seller is having with the sale of this house is letting go of all of those memories? I could imagine, like right now, just thinking about it, I've only lived in my current house for less than 2 years, but all of the memories that I've made in this house in just 2 years could not even come close to imagining what those memories would look like in 30 years. They changed their kids' diapers. They sent their kids to their first day of school here. They went through 35 different birthday parties in this house. Those memories mean something to that seller. You're going to have to figure out how to move those memories forward and get that seller to let those memories go. So we're sitting down with the seller. You know what? Her and her husband lived in this house. Husband's died. Her 3 children have moved on. She can't afford this home on her own. She's 6 months behind on payment. She's living off of ramen noodles and bags of cereal because she can't afford to shop for herself. She's not going out to eat dinner. She's not going out to the movie theater. She's not spending any time with her kids because she can't afford the gas. She is doing everything she can to hold on to the memories of this house, and it's inevitable. There is no way for her to get this house back. It's gonna happen. This house is gonna be sold. But the sale and auction of this house is going to destroy this person. You're going to have to figure out how to pull that person away from that. Okay? Here's some thoughts and processes to help pull this person away from, and you're doing this person a benefit by doing this. You're not being manipulative. You're not taking advantage of the situation. They can't afford the home, not even close to afford the home. There's massive amounts of repairs that need to be done to the home because they can't even afford to pay for it. This person is not in a good situation. Let's say the house payment's $1,800 a month and this person's only bringing in $1,300 a month. You can't live here anymore. It's just not possible. So here's a way that I might work through with that seller to get them to the other side of this line. Okay, hey, I understand you've built a lot of memories here. Just walking through this house here with you, I can see the memories that have happened to this home. You know, I know that you and your husband spent the weekend redoing this kitchen, and I can truly understand all of that, and I cannot even begin to imagine the stress that you're under right now. But I see what's happening to you here, both not only physically, but not only mentally, but physically. I can see the stress on you. Like, you know, you're doing everything you can to save this, and it is wearing on you hard. When's the last time you went out and spent some quality time with your grandchildren and your children? You know, you haven't. I mean, the stories you've heard that I've heard talking to you, you can't even afford to. Let me ask you this. Your late husband, do you think your late husband would prefer you to be living in this house, unable to afford it, unable to maintain it, unable to live a social life that leads you down a path of prosperity and joy? Or would your husband prefer you sell this, put some of this equity into your back pocket, some of this equity that the two of y'all have built together, putting some of that equity into your back pocket so that way you can move into a place that you can afford? This house payment right here is $1,800 a month, but there's plenty of places out right now that you can get for $650 to $700 a month that are safe, clean, and affordable. Would your husband rather you be in a place that's safe, clean, and affordable, where you've got expendable income, you've got some of this equity in your house, so that way you can take a vacation with the grandkids, so that you can start building new memories with your new family and get this stress behind you? Because right now I can tell just talking to you how much this house, although it is full of memories, this house has been a severe burden on you for the past 2 years. You've used all of your savings trying to keep it. You've gone through and you've done everything. You've sold everything you've got to try and keep it. There's just no way to keep it. How would it make you feel to allow this house to go to a new family, a new family that's going to start, you know, their family here with their children and have their memories in this house, and allow you to move on with some money in your pocket in such a fashion that you can start creating new memories again with your kids and grandkids while the times are still good? You know, this is an opportunity for you to let this go. And if I had to say, you know what, pray on it for a second, talk with your husband and think about this for a second. Would your husband rather you be in a position where you've got money in the bank and you're not stressed, or holding on to these memories? Because these memories will be there with you forever. This house, though, unfortunately, with the state that it's in and your inability to afford it, it's going to get sold at auction. I'd much rather you sell it right now and put some of this equity in your back pocket. Do you see how I just tried to get this seller beyond those memories? Am I trying to be manipulative? Am I trying to get them to do something they shouldn't do? The person's bringing in $1,400 a month, and their house payment's $1,800 a month. That doesn't even take into consideration car payments, credit card payments, basic necessities of food, and everything else like that. Okay? This seller really is in a situation they need to sell. And if the auction's 2 weeks away and they cannot overcome these memories and they're holding on to those memories, they could lose their equity at the auction. That is far worse of a situation than making the sale of this property on their terms and not the bank's. So that's just a guided path that I can kind of help you understand to get your seller looking at the other side of the line and letting some of those memories go. Okay, so move on to the next slide. Make a genuine effort to connect and solve their problems. It's obvious to them. Didn't have you on the slides. It's obvious to them if you're there only for the money. For their money. I mean, has anybody ever bought a car from that used car salesman when you can tell that the only thing on that used car salesman's mind was how much they can get from you? Very pushy, very nasty, very just blah, blah, blah. Gimme, 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 gimme. Versus someone else, maybe a car salesman, that didn't take that approach with you, truly took into consideration, what are your needs? Okay, you do not want a black truck, but you want a dually and you want a diesel. Well, here's what I have. Okay, seller needs, and you're speaking with the seller in a fashion that the seller understands and can help you move forward with. Okay, so going on to the next one, you may need to fill the role of tough love. Give them the facts. Sometimes you're going to be speaking with a seller that's refusing to face the reality that they cannot keep their home. Keeping their home is not an option. How do I know it's not an option? Absent a miracle, you don't have a job. You don't have anybody loaning you the money to stay here. You don't have any equity in anything that you can sell to keep this house. There are no options for a home equity line of credit. There's no options for a refinance. There's no options for a loan modification. There's no options for a forbearance agreement. There's no options other than selling this home. You will run into these situations where the seller's just like, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. Well, at the point in time, I've gotten to a seller that is being just absent-minded of logic, reason, and their reality. Sometimes bringing them back to reality is not only in their best interest, or not only in your best interest, it's in their best interest too. Let's say there's a foreclosure auction happening in 5 days. Okay? Foreclosure option happening in 5 days. And the seller's like, you know what? I'm just going to keep the house. Where are you getting the money from? I don't know. How are you planning to keep it? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? What's going on? I don't know. Well, guess what? I'm going to get a little more toothy with my conversation. I'm going to start being a little bit more pushy. I just talked about being pushy, but there's times where pushy is smart and there's times where pushy is not smart. In a situation when you're talking to a seller that has zero logic to their thought process, it's strictly an emotional response to their current situation. The default clearly states in 5 days, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, your house is being sold. This isn't your choice. Your house is being sold in 5 days. The choice right now for you is to decide how you want to sell it. Would you rather have a stranger buy this, knock on your door, bring a constable over here, take you, your family, and all your belongings and set them on the curb? Or would you rather negotiate the terms of this sale on your terms, not the bank's, and structure the sale of this property in such a way that you might be able to have some money to put down as a down payment on something else? You might have some money to move. You might have some money to put in your bank account to catch up your car payment. You know what? Because if you don't make these decisions, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to come up. I'm going to knock on the front door when I buy the property at the auction, and I'm going to show up with the sheriff whenever you refuse to leave, and I'm going to have the sheriff remove you from this house. It's your choice right now. Do you want to take this on the bank's terms, or do you want to take it on your terms? Your terms can be chosen right now. I am here. I am a cash buyer. I have the ability to get this foreclosure stopped. And while I have no desire whatsoever to put you in a bad situation, the situation that you've already put yourself in is a bad one. You want to keep this house. It's not an option. It's not. There's no option out there available that I'm aware of, and there's obviously not an option that you're aware of because you haven't exercised it yet. You're going to have to sell this house. It's either on your terms or the bank's terms. And then I'll just shut up. You know, that sounds harsh. But for anybody that's out there that's ever had to raise a child, sometimes you have to give some tough love. Sometimes you have to lay the reality out there straight. Sometimes you have to tell somebody their current situation isn't all rosy and you're not going to get to keep this house. It's not going to happen. So don't be afraid to do that when it's necessary. You know, don't do that just to do that. But if you've got a seller that's absolutely refusing to pay attention to logic in their current situation, laying down the reality for them is not necessarily a bad thing to do. Okay? Now, all that's left to do is make the offer. We've kind of gone through, we've hit the motivations, we've talked about how to overcome some of those things. Whenever I go into making the offer, not every single time is money the biggest thing on the table. You know, some often things is money. That's one of the key negotiation points, but other negotiation points are time. How much more time do you need in this house? How much more time can I get you in this house? Some other things are, you know what, you're only 4 payments behind on this house. Your credit's not completely screwed right now. You know what? The potential of getting this home sold and getting your credit protected is a very good possibility. You know what? Giving you more time and or helping you find a place to move is another point of negotiations. And you know what? They don't want to sell. That's not a good point of motivation, but those are some of the things that I look at. Anytime I look at these 3, money, time, place to move, their credit, those are things that I picked up in that first hour-long conversation. I'm going through, and as we're having these conversations, I'll start hearing signs of what's their concerns are. You know what? If I'm walking through the house and they're like, man, my credit's getting jacked up right now. I've always had an 800 plus credit score, and this right here is just destroying my credit right now. Well, while I hear that, you know, that's just getting added to my memory bank. Their credit is a concern. All right, so whenever I'm talking right then and there, I was like, well, you know what? If we can get this property taken care of right now, we can get these late payments kicked off so you're not getting any more of them. And by doing that, we can probably save a big chunk of your credit. And by not allowing this property to go to foreclosure, that will definitely save your credit. So I'm glad that you called us. I'm glad that you took the initiative to reach out to a professional like myself that can help secure and save your credit from getting damaged any more than it already is. Well, if I know that that's a motivation for the seller, I can speak on that. You know what? But if I'm walking through the house and the seller's like, man, my credit's jacked up. I don't care. I never really have cared. I don't even know why this bank sold me the house. You know, my credit wasn't all that great when I got it. Well, if all I do in the negotiations is talk about their credit, their concerns are so I can address them in my offer. Okay? So when it comes time to negotiating, money is always a piece to it. But whenever I am talking with the seller essentially has 3 potential things that they can negotiate in this process. What are some of the other things that can be negotiated in the process of this paperwork? You know what? Another one is cash. How much cash are you going to receive, and at what time frame will you receive it in? Okay? I'm going to lay this out here for you, and for anybody that's never seen this concept, I'm going to allow y'all to open up and get you some questions brought in on this, because this is a pretty important concept, and I always bring this to light whenever I'm talking with my sellers. We've got 2 points of negotiation so far: the speed at which you receive the money and how much money you receive. Okay? There is a third negotiation point, and that is top dollar. Okay? You've got a negotiation point of, you know what? I want to maximize the amount of money I get out of this house, meaning they want top dollar for it. You can negotiate the way they receive that money, you know, what speed they receive it in and how they receive it. Those are 3 points. Okay? Fast, cash, or top dollar. You only get to pick 2. Right there in the middle, where all 3 of these connect together, where fast, cash, and top dollar intersect, that's a unicorn. That rarely, and I do mean rarely, is going to happen. So with that taken into mind, what is most important to you? Do you need to get this closed fast? I believe you do. You know what? Your auction's set for 5 days from now. You need to get this done in a very timely fashion, so we know that of the 3, that fast is extremely important. So the next piece that you're going to need to figure out is, do you want cash for it right now, or do you want top dollar? Because I can give you either one, but I can't give you both. You know what? If you want cash, I can do that, but it's not going to be top dollar. I've got to pad myself for some profit, and I've got to make sure that I'm able to set myself in a situation where I don't lose money. You know what? You want top dollar? That's great, but I'm not going to be able to give you cash and top dollar. If you want top dollar, you're going to have to accept this in payments over time. Okay, so right there is how you will see me start opening up the conversation to a subject to transaction. I'm not just sitting down with the seller and being like, hey, would you be willing to let me take over this property subject to, and I'll make your payments moving forward? I don't speak on it like that. I will, though, lay out, and I'll basically say, hey, I've really got 3 options that we can kind of work from here. One of them being the speed at which we close, and based upon the current auction date, it looks like that this is going to have to be done pretty fast. So I see that fast is a very important piece to this paperwork. But there's 2 other pieces to this paperwork that we need to figure out the details on. One of them being, you know what? Do you want top dollar on this property, or do you want cash? I'll give you one of those 2 options. I'll gladly pay you top dollar for this property, but I won't be able to pay it in cash, or I can pay you cash, but I won't be able to pay you top dollar. Well, of those 2, which one really is the most important to you? Okay, do you have any pressing current cash needs that I can address? If so, you know what, maybe I can give you a little bit of a blend of those 2. But you know what? Overall, that is how I start moving down the path of subject to offers, is I'll start saying, well, I want top dollar. Okay, well, if you want top dollar, would you allow me to give you 150 equal payments, or 180 equal monthly payments? Okay, I'll just say that, and I'll just shut up. Will you allow me to give you 180 equal payments? It's not up front, but I'll give it to you in equal payments over 180 months. Well, would you like to receive 180 payments monthly? Okay, the seller might like the sound of that, and if they like the sound of that, that's how I'm going to say, okay, you know what? Here's how I can structure that offer. Here's how I can do this. Here's how I can do that. It just gives me different ways of opening up that conversation. Okay, moving forward, I always go through in the back of my mind with 3 different offer scenarios: a cash offer, a short-term financing offer, and a long-term financing offer. I'll only present one, and I'll present the one that I feel like is in the best interest of the seller moving forward with me. Now, if they refuse to take that offer, I'll start throwing out some other options. And as I start opening up more options, I find that normally the seller will settle on one of the 3. But I'll always move forward with the one that I feel like is most likely to be in the best interest of all parties. Okay, if that's a cash offer, I'll open up with a cash offer. If I think it's a short-term financing offer, I'll offer up a short-term financing offer. If I think it's a long-term financing offer, I'll open with that. But if they look at it and they're like, oh, I don't like this, and I'll try and negotiate the terms of it, and they still don't like it, I'll be like, well, I know I offered you a long-term financing option. Would you be willing to do a short-term financing offer with me? Well, guess what? They might be like, well, yeah, I'd consider that. What are you talking about? What are the details? Well, I'll bust out the details for them. Okay, and for those of you that are watching right now and you don't really understand what I mean by cash, short, and long-term financing options, I'll give you a quick understanding of what I mean on that. Long-term financing is, okay, here it is. Would you allow me to give you 360 equal monthly payments over the course of the payment of this house until I've got it paid off? I'll give you $300,000 for the house if you let me make it in 360 equal payments. All right. No, you don't like that. I'm not going into all of the deep details on that. I'm just kind of giving you an understanding of that. I'll move into, okay, would you allow me to purchase the property for $280,000, but I've got a year to pay it to you? You know what? Instead of it being 360 payments, also known as a 30-year mortgage, instead of it being 30 years, would you allow me 1 year to come up with that $280,000? All right. You don't like the way that sounds? Okay, let me tell you what the exit strategy is for that. Well, let me tell you what the exit strategy is for both of those. 360 equal payments means that this person's going to sell it to me on some sort of wrap and or direct owner financing, and or maybe I can take over the property subject to with a second lien, blah, 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 blah. There's infinite ways to contract something. But what I'm going to do with that property is I'm likely to turn around and either rent it because I've got financing in place, or I'll turn around and sell it on a wrap, and I'll correct a yield arbitrage off the interest payments. Okay. Option number 2, a short-term financing option. I didn't offer the full $300 that I offered on the 360, but I did make a $280,000 offer. Well, I'm sitting here thinking that the retail value on this property is about $330 and it needs no work. Okay. Well, I got it for $280. What is that going to do? That now means that I've got a full year to list this property on the MLS and get it sold directly to the MLS. Once I pay realtors commissions, and I really shouldn't have too much on the acquisition side. Let's say the realtors commissions are about $20,000 to $25,000 in commissions and closing costs. I've still got $25,000 to $30,000 in equity on that property that I'm going to get at closing. So yeah, I'll do a short-term financing option. I'll use that as a wholesale opportunity to take this property directly to the MLS, sell it on the MLS. It took me no money up front out of pocket to get the property closed, and then on the backside, I'm able to turn around and sell it on the MLS direct. Okay. Third option is cash. Well, you know what? You don't like the long-term option. You don't like the short-term option. I'd be willing to pay you $206,000 for the property cash today. Okay, so you got to see the 3 differences there. Okay, moving forward here, time. Here's some ways that we might be able to negotiate time. You know what? I can give you a short-term lease back. Do be aware that in your state, leasebacks with pre-foreclosure sellers may have laws revolving around them. Some laws are called equity stripping. Do make sure that you understand how that is. I do not recommend anybody do a leaseback with a pre-foreclosure seller at all unless you are very aware of how to protect yourself. Okay? Leaving somebody in that property after you purchase it pre-foreclosure is very, very, very risky. Okay? I do not recommend you do that. Scenarios where I might be willing to do that is, let's say the seller is receiving a substantial amount of equity at closing. Let's say they're about to receive $25,000 at closing. If I do a short-term lease back, I will do something along these lines. I will release $5,000 of that equity to you at closing. The remainder, the $20,000, will remain in escrow, and that will be held as a security deposit on your property. In the event that you damage this property, fail to vacate, and or cause any damage to the property at all, I am allowed to retain that $20,000 for legal fees, eviction fees, repair, all of these types of things. What that does is put a very big fire in that seller's back pocket to get out and perform like they were supposed to. I do not recommend giving a lease back to anybody other than in those situations when you're dealing with pre-foreclosures. Okay, but do make sure you pay attention to your state's laws. In Texas specifically, I'm not an attorney nor giving legal advice. I'm actually quite the opposite. I'm somewhat stupid. All of that taken into consideration. Texas, how does Texas work? Short-term leasebacks in Texas. I do not remember the law verbatim, but it is something along the lines of, if you do lease the property back to them, it cannot be a long-term lease, and that it must be below market rents, substantially below market rents. And I don't recall why or how all of that works, but my attorney found out that I was doing leasebacks and he chewed me a new one. He was like, absolutely not. Like, I actually represented an investor 2 years ago that did a leaseback like that, gave the property back to the seller and just rented it to him. Was renting it there for close to 14 months, and then the tenant stopped making payments. And when the tenant stopped making payments, the homeowner tried to evict him. When the homeowner tried to evict him, the seller got an attorney involved. The attorney came in and said, hey, these laws here in Texas state that if you're going to rent the property back to the homeowner after a foreclosure, it must be done at substantially below market rates. With that taken into consideration, you did not do that. You owe a home to this seller. That investor had to continue making the payments on that house and let that seller live there for free for the rest of his life. At the point in time the seller died, the investor got the home back. Could you imagine how that could hurt you and your portfolio if you were in that situation? That is not good. That is not good. So be careful doing any sort of short-term leasebacks with the seller. Outside of Texas, in Texas, make sure you understand what your laws are. Some of them are referred to as equity stripping, equity mining. So maybe take a look at that. But in the state of Texas, I for a fact know that it's a law. And most states that I'm aware of do have a law that do protect homeowners in foreclosure from these types of situations. Okay. Next up, short sale. You know what? If the bank is underwater, we could potentially get you more time in this property by initiating a short sale with the lender, and that might get you 3 to 9 months, possibly even more of time in the property. During this time, we're going to negotiate to get a short payoff on the loan and give me the ability to purchase this property. But this might get you an extra 9 months in this house. Would you be willing to do that, Mr. or Mrs. Seller? There's never been a time where I've been talking with the seller. Call though, working on a lease back right now, only 45 days, and my team is working on helping the seller pack and move, problem solving. I love it. You know, those are good situations for setting up those leaseback terms. Just make sure that you leave yourself protected in some way, that if the seller fails to vacate, you're not in a bad situation. And that's not always possible, but it's in your best interest to try and set it up in some fashion that leaves you protected. Okay, so we talked about a short sale to give them some more time. A bankruptcy is not something I would ever recommend a seller to do outside of very rare circumstances. But in the event that the seller needs more time to resolve some of their issues, a bankruptcy, even filing a bankruptcy and then canceling it immediately, can get the seller at least another 30 to 60 days in the house. If they do go forward with the bankruptcy and they stay in bankruptcy, that might give them an extra couple of years in that house. I do try to make sure that the seller is aware, though, that every single month that goes by, their equity is disappearing. So they have a choice right now of living in the house for free for the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months, or walking away today with $15,000 to $20,000 in their back pocket. You know, if the seller's got equity, every month that they don't stay in the house, they're not staying there for free. They're actually staying there for more than free because they're losing their equity in the home every single day. Okay, so TRO, a temporary restraining order, can possibly postpone a foreclosure for a couple of weeks. And a forbearance agreement with the bank might be able to postpone the property for 30, 60, 90, 180 days. So these are all ways that you, as a foreclosure specialist, might be able to work with the seller to get them more time in the home. Those are 5 different ways that you might be able to negotiate more time in this home for the seller. Okay, so this is all at the point of contracting, at the point of the paperwork. If the seller starts bringing up time, well, here's 5 ways that you might be able to work with them to get more time. Okay. Credit. If credit is a concern for them, how can we help them? Well, we can start making payments for the seller moving forward, also known as subject to. Every single month that I make that payment on time on your behalf is another report to the credit bureau of your timely monthly payment, which will help establish and rebuild your credit. Other things is I can pay off your house and avoid a deficiency judgment. That's much better than a foreclosure. If you're concerned about your credit, foreclosure is definitely not something that you're going to want on your credit report. You can go forward and let me pay off this house by purchasing the property and avoid that foreclosure. Other things that you might be able to do is there are multi-level marketing systems out there that offer foreclosure repair services. I think like forget what the name of that is, but there's several multi-level marketing credit repair companies out there that you can work with and then refer these sellers over to also bring a little bit of income in on the side. What else do we have here? Other things we can negotiate on, and this is a big one. Like of all of them, even more so. The biggest one, probably time. The second biggest one is probably a place to go. A lot of these people are scared and they're nervous and they don't know where they're going to go after this home has been sold. Okay, so here are some things that we might be able to look at on behalf of the seller. Okay, you don't know where they're going to go. What does your income look like? What do I mean by that? Do you have a job? Do you have steady income coming in? Okay, if you do have steady income coming in, then there's a good chance that we're going to be able to get you someplace else to go. If they don't, there's some other things to take into consideration. Do they have any equity coming out of this house? That equity might give them the opportunity to give someplace else to go. So if they have no income, they're probably going to need to stay with friends or family or get comfortable with toughing it out in their vehicle or something like that for a period of time. I know that's crappy, but if there's no income, it's very difficult to get approved for a rental. Now, if you've got equity coming out of the house and you have no job, you might be able to use that equity to negotiate with a landlord, paying a year's worth of rent in advance up front. So that might be a way that they can move out of that home and move on to the next property. Let's say they have low income. Well, maybe be able to qualify for some low income housing. Might be able to go out and get themselves a mobile home in a mobile home park where it's a little more affordable. You know what? These types of options exist. What other things might they have? If they do have equity in the property, maybe let's say they got $15,000 in equity. Well, go out and buy yourself a mobile home in a mobile home park. 15 grand, pay cash for it. Now all you have to do is pay the lot rent. Lot rent's $250 a month. You've got Social Security income coming in right now of $800 a month. 250 of that goes to lot rent. You don't have to worry so much about making a monthly payment anymore. So these are different ways of being able to set these sellers up with a place to go. And you're likely going to have to do it for them, and you're going to have to get forward and making that move forward and making that happen. And on a side note, man, I'm excited to hear you talking about that, Edwin. I'm really excited to hear you talking about that you've got a team you're working with and that you've got properties you're getting contracted. For those that don't know, I've known Edwin for probably about a year now. And when I first met him, he hadn't contracted a property yet that I know of. And I've seen him progress in this industry over the past year, bootstrapping it from the bottom up, man. He has put blood, sweat, and tears into this industry. And for the people that do take that effort and that don't give up, they will succeed. And as of right now, like he's showing us proof of that success. He's negotiating the terms of a lease back with the seller right now. That is definitely a far advancement from where he was at a year ago. So I'm excited to see that happening with you, man. I'm really glad on that side. So let's see what else we got here. I'm going to move forward, okay? How are y'all liking this so far? Y'all liking this format? Am I moving forward at a good pace? Are y'all getting value out of this? Does this seem a little sketch? Am I not going into enough detail, too much detail? Didn't get what you were wanting out of this? Give me a little bit of feedback as how I can be a better instructor here, because as it is, I'm not here getting paid. I'm here really, truly trying to provide a service to you. And if I'm trying to provide that service to you, help me help you by telling me what I could do to make this better. Okay? So they don't want to move. Okay, the seller doesn't want to move. Long-term lease back in some form of rent. You do have to be aware that this is potentially an issue. You're going to need to talk with your attorneys and make sure that a long-term lease back is an option for them. A short-term lease back with no payments, that's also an option. Don't be afraid to offer the seller a dose of reality. Sometimes when they're just like, you know what, I don't want to move. Well, sometimes you just got to hit these people up. You just got to hit them up with the reality of, I know you don't want to, but you have to. There's no options around it. You're going to have to do it. If you are getting value out of this, please help me by sharing it in some of the other Facebook groups that you're a part of, some of these other real estate investing groups, so that way they can get some value out of this as well. So if they don't want to move, but at the end of it, it's my job, and I do consider it my job to bring these people's objections back to reality. If their objections have logic and tangible facts to them, then yeah, of course, I'm definitely gonna jive with them. But on the other side of it, if like they're sitting here thinking, oh, I'm gonna stay in the house for the rest of my life and I'm never gonna make a payment on it, their reality is so far away from the world's reality that you're gonna need to bring them back to it. Okay, so the final piece of actually making the offer. Let's see if I got that messed up. I do make sure that I make this upfront aware, like probably even while I'm on the phone call before I even show up to the property. I'll probably also make sure that it's aware while I'm opening the door. One of the things that I bring up early on in the conversation, and this is something that I got from Grant Kemp as my mentor. This is business. It's not personal. Like at the end of the day, I wish you the best and I want to see nothing but the best for you, but I can't make decisions that hurt my business. I have to support my family from this, and if I make a bad decision, this can not only hurt my company, but the people that work for me, as well as my kids and my family. I'm not going to make a unwise business decision that puts me at risk to help you. I'll do everything I possibly can to help you, but in my opinion, like I have to make this a wise business decision. So when the seller is sitting there and they say something that's not a wise business decision, I can just bring that up. I was like, that's a great point, but that's just not a wise business decision for me. That's not something I can personally do. Okay. Every decision is made on business. Set this premise up front. While you want to help them, you can't. My goal here at the end of the day is not to help you. My goal is to move forward in a profitable way. And if I get to help you, then that's great. And I'll definitely help you even if I don't make a profit on it, but I'm not going to do something that's going to put me in trouble. And what I mean by that is like, what I mean by this, and I think I said that wrong when I said it, is I do want to help the person wholeheartedly. And if that means I don't make money, then I won't make money, because I want to make sure that this how do I say that? If I can help the seller and I don't make money, that's fine. But I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I am hurting myself to help the seller. Like if I see a path for the seller to get out and I don't make any money, I'm going to give that path to the seller. I'm not going to withhold that path in an attempt to make money. So that's maybe not in some people's eyes, a wise business decision, but in my opinion, it's the ethical decision. And we are real estate investors. We're not con artists. We got to remember that. We have to remember we are real estate investors, not con artists. Con artists lie to people to make money. We don't do that. So if I see a situation where the seller can get out and I have the ability to help them through that, I'll help them through that. But I'm not going to buy the house for more than what I should just to help the person. That puts me in a bad situation that could take money out of my family's back pocket and take money out of my business. I will not do that. Okay. Let's see what's going on. Let's go on to the next piece. Are they right or left brained? When I start breaking down the offer, this is where the left and right brain really pays attention. As you saw earlier in these slides, I talked about left and right brain when we're walking through the property, when we're doing those things. The reason I did that then is because I am trying to figure out when it comes time to speak at the negotiations part, how to approach the negotiations. As I pick up on telltale signs of a right-left brain person while I'm at the house, I'll start tailoring my conversation to work with a left or a right brain person. But this gets extremely important when it gets time to contract the property. Contracting a left brain person with a right brain style is absolutely detrimental to your progress and vice versa. So moving forward, left brain people, they're typically based on logic and numbers. Like if you can wrap this persona up into a stereotype, it's like your engineer. It's your engineer, the person that's just super geeky on the numbers and super methodical in their pathways, very informative, researched, those type of people. Now, that's generalities. But overall, when you find somebody that's heavy on the numbers, that's heavy on details and heavy on that type of stuff, they're going to be a left brain person. And if you move to them with a right brain logic, you're going to set yourself up for disaster. Okay? Now, moving forward with there, how do I work with these people? I pull out what I call net sheets. The net sheets are my way of breaking the numbers down. Okay? It's like, okay, step by step. What is your home worth all fixed up? And I'll go through with the seller. I'll pull open a computer. I'll run the comps. I'll do all of this. I'll run through all of that. Details, details, details. I'm going to give this person as many details as I possibly can. The net sheets, ARV, resale costs, lender's costs, closing costs, repair costs, all of this. I'm going to go through all of this with the seller step by step by step. And I'm not going to go through all of this. There's plenty of shows on Propelio TV. Search Propelio TV channel on YouTube for these. We talk about that a lot. But give them just tons of information, as much data as you think they can handle. And this will oftentimes put this left brain person in a situation where they feel comfortable making a decision. So I always approach the left brain person with as many details as I possibly can. Now, if I approach a right brain person with all of these details, they're just gonna back into a corner and be like, "Shut up! Like, you're boring me. I'm tired of this." But a left brain person is gonna eat this up. They're gonna love it. They're just gonna ask for more and more and more. So you got to know who your seller is and how to work with them. Okay. So let's look at the next step. Right brain people. They're a lot more emotional. They're a lot more talkative. They're a lot more, I don't know. I guess like we kind of summed up a persona for the left brain person as an engineer. The same for the right brain. These type of people, you really need to share with them the vision. Okay, here's what we're going to do with the property. We're going to come through. We're going to open this kitchen up. We're going to get some new modern cabinets. Have you ever considered making any updates to this bedroom? What would you do? What type of doorknobs would you do? What type of doors would you do? What kind of flooring? Would you put tile in the kitchen, or do you think you'd go with hardwoods? You know, these types of things. Those types of things really get the seller bought into the vision of what your plans are with the house. And I side with them emotionally to pull them through. Okay? So these are the types of ways that I'll work with a right brain person. So I tailor my offer based upon the what the seller needs, not what I want to do. Okay? Once again, as I get prepared to make the offer, I'm going to bring this up again. You know what? We've got three options. We've got fast cash, top dollar, right there in the middle. That's rare. That's not something that we're going to see very often at all. So of the three, which two do you want? I can give you two. I can't give you all three. Okay. Provide options. We've talked about that. These are different slide decks for different presentations, so I kind of double up on some stuff here at time. But you know, cash offer is the fast with the lowest amount, the lowest offer. It's fast, but it's the lowest offer. Short-term financing is a slightly higher offer, but it won't be a cash offer. It's going to be a short-term financing, like a year or two, maybe less than 5. Long-term is the highest offer, but you need to be patient with the process. You're going to get paid your money, but it's going to be over 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. Okay? Handling objections. No is only a roadblock you need to learn how to get through. No is only a roadblock you need to learn how to get through. I don't remember who said this, but there was a very common term used that no is just the start of negotiations. No is just the start of negotiations. So if the conversation, you know, you've built all this rapport and you start talking about the numbers and you can tell that this rapport is starting to go the opposite direction. The seller's getting a little frustrated. They're getting a little tense. Well, guess what? If that starts happening, hit the brakes. Boom, stop right there. Don't get your seller agitated. From there, figure out the issue. It's like, okay, hey, you know, we've been talking for a while and I can tell that you're getting a little frustrated. Can you help me out and just let me understand what have I done that got you frustrated? And just shut up and let them tell you what's going on. Why are they frustrated? What took them from being happy about this scenario to now being frustrated and not wanting to deal with it? Open up and figure that out. Never feel nervous about asking a seller point blank that you've noticed a mood change. Just being direct like that will open up a conversation. And that conversation is needed for you to get to the other side of it. And it's like, like even with my kids, it's like if I'm having a conversation with my kids and I can tell that they're not feeling in the best moods, or they're being real rambunctious or something like that. It's like, hey, you got a little bit of energy, you bored, you want to go play, or hey, you seem a little down on yourself. Something going on? What's going on, kiddo? I'll do that with my kids. Well, I don't feel any different with talking to a seller that way. It's like, okay, I can tell that the mood changed with the seller. What happened? I'll ask them. Just ask them. Okay. Change the subject. You know what? If we're not moving forward and we're not doing good there, change the subject. Pull away a little bit, talk a little bit about something else, and then bounce back to it. Come back around when it's in a better place. I might pull into the numbers, pull away from the numbers, into the numbers, away from the numbers, and I'll go in 5, 6, 7, 8 different times. I'll start trying to just kind of weave the numbers into it to see where the conversation starts getting a little more comfortable. Okay? Bounce in and out of this as many times as needed. Grow roots. This is an important one. Grow roots. Don't accept no. I've been on appointments 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. And I walk away with the contract. What do I mean, grow roots? If they say no, divert the conversation, get talking about something else, come back to it. If they say no again, keep drilling. If the conversation starts going south, pull away from it, talk about something else, come back to it. Just boom, 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 boom. You know what? Oh man, maybe I can work with my numbers a little bit. So let me walk through the house one more time. Boom, I'll walk through the house real fast, come back and be like, I'm really thinking my number's solid where it's at right now. I mean, this foundation's got me concerned, and legitimately so. I've bought homes with foundation issues similar to this, where not only was it the foundation that was wrong, but all the lateral sewer lines under the property were cast iron, rotted out, and I had to replace all the sewer lines under the property, which was an unexpected $15,000 expense that I learned from. So because of that, I've got to pad myself on this offer a little bit for the potential of that happening. Now, right now, the offer that I do have on the table has no contingencies. As you notice, I did not put an option on here. I did not put any options to walk away from this contract. So that is a very important piece to this contract. But if you would be willing to, I'll add a 5-day option period into this contract where I can bring in a sewer, a plumber to snake these lines and run a scope through them and give me an understanding of what the condition of these are underneath the property. Because I need to make sure via hydrostatic plumbing test that I don't have any breaks in these lines under the house. And you know what? I'll go ahead and make my offer a little bit higher right now. But I'm going to let you know that if I do this hydrostatic test and I do come to find out that there are breaks in this sewer line under this property, that I'm going to need to adjust my numbers accordingly. Is that fair? All right, let's move forward. Let's contract it. All right, no, that's not fair. Well, what's holding you back? Like you were wanting 70, 15 minutes ago. I've agreed to come up to 70. The only thing I've really changed is the contingency period for an inspection, and I think that's fair. I mean, do you know of any breaks in this line under the house? Well, if you don't know of any breaks under the lines of this house, I don't know of any breaks under the lines of this house, but if there are breaks in these lines under this house, it can cost me a lot of money. So what I say is I'll give you what you want and we'll do this test. And if this test comes back negative, no breaks, you get exactly what you want. But if the breaks are there, we'll need to deduct the price of these breaks from the purchase. Boom. Now you see how I'm weaving in and out of this? And I'll just keep going back and forth, going back and forth, going back and forth. And that's how I'll move forward, and I'll just grow roots. And my goal is to get the contract or get kicked out. It's really one of those two. Okay. Iron out the details. I'll reiterate all of the details of the agreement that we've came to verbally. I'm just going to go over. Okay, so you're agreeing that I'll close on the property in 5 days. I'm going to pay $82,000 cash. I have no contingencies on the property, and you'll get to stay in the property 5 days after closing to move. Does that sound about like what we've agreed to? Okay. Well, then what we're going to need to do is, now that we've agreed to that, I'm going to need to put all of these details in writing so that way we can transfer all of this information over to the title company. The title company is going to be the people that handle this transaction on our behalf. Okay. So let's go ahead and put all of these details into writing. I'm going to go ahead and present the paperwork. I like to call it paperwork. Some people call it a contract. I don't like calling it contracts. I like calling it the paperwork. All right, well, let's just go ahead and put all these details that we've just discussed into the paperwork so we can hand this paperwork off to the title company and get the process of this foreclosure stopped and get you moving on and getting this problem in your rearview mirror. Okay, so I'll explain its purpose. Like I just said, it's like the purpose of this paperwork is is to hand over these details to the title company. Okay? Highlight the key points that we've agreed upon. We've agreed the purchase price, the close date, the lease back term, who's paying the taxes, who pays the closing costs. We've already agreed to all of this. I just need to get this information into the hands of the title company. I'll let the seller see me pencil all of this information into the contract. I say pencil, pin all of this onto the contract. I'll sit there right there with them, and I'll be like, all right, we agreed to $80,000. All right, $80,000. I'll write it down so the seller can say it. We said we'd close in 5 days. Here's the closing date right here. Okay, we also agreed that I'd pay all the closing costs. Here's that checkbox. I paid the closing costs. So the seller can see step by step what I'm doing with that paperwork. Okay, and I'll move forward from there. And people don't like to go back on their verbal agreements. Once we've agreed on it verbally, putting it in the contract typically does not become an issue. The seller has already agreed to it, and they're at the point where they're like, all right, I'm done with this. Let's move forward. Let's get this gone, and let's get out of here, okay? So let's go forward. Paperwork list, a short list of potential documentation you may also need while at the initial appointment. I need the purchase agreement for sure. I'm going to need a third-party authorization guaranteed. What is a third-party authorization? It's a simple document that says, I am the borrower on the property, and I'm going to allow Daniel Chadmore and his company communicate with you, the banker, on my behalf. That's essentially what it says. It's a little bit more wordy than that, but all it's saying is, I'm the homeowner, and I'm going to let Daniel Moore and his company communicate with you, the bank, on my behalf. I always have a third-party authorization with me. Always, always, always. I'm going to have addendums, whatever those might be, leaseback addendums, seller's leaseback addendums, personal property addendums, mineral right reservation addendums. I'm going to have all different kinds of addendums with me at any given point in time. Affidavits of heirship questionnaires, so I always have those with me. Always, always, always have those with me. Mortgage statements. I want to get a copy of their mortgage statement. Always, always, always want to get a copy of their mortgage statement. Death certificates. In the event that this property was a probate or an affidavit or a deceased homeowner, I want to get copies of the death certificate while I'm there. Because remember, and I got to say this, remember, this property's going to foreclosure. And I'm going to take a second on this, and I'm going to side skirt, and I'm going to hit a rabbit trail because I find it to be important. If you do not have a lot of experience with title, if you do not have a lot of experience with closing property, please, please, please JV with somebody on pre-foreclosures until you're comfortable with them, and or take this very seriously. This person's home is going to auction in a week. You've got 5 days to get this deal closed. You need to be Johnny on the spot about getting shit taken care of. And there's no way to sugarcoat that. Get shit taken care of. Part of that is while you're contracting the property, getting all of the details ironed out for the title company. Why am I talking about affidavits of heirship questionnaires? Why am I talking about death certificates? Why am I talking about divorce papers? Because I have closed enough properties to know that those types of issues show up at title. I'm having a conversation with sellers like, yeah, we got divorced 2 years ago. Oh, you got divorced 2 years ago. What happened? Oh, I was awarded the property at closing. Okay, you were awarded property at closing. Great. Do you have a copy of the divorce decree? Okay. I want that divorce decree. I want a copy of it. Why? Because as soon as I submit all of my paperwork to the title company, guess what I'm going to submit with it? A copy of the divorce decree. Why? Because the title company is almost guaranteeing that they're going to need a copy of the divorce decree. If there was a death in the home, or a death in the chain of title, the title company might need to see a death certificate. Well, if the homeowner's got one there, I'm going to do my best to try and get it while I'm on the property. Okay. What else? Contact info for all sellers. Very, very, very important. Get the contact information for every seller that's there. Every seller that's there. Every seller. Okay? Get cell phone numbers, alternate cell phone numbers, work phone numbers, email addresses, all of this information. Okay? Lien information. Any lien that's against the house. Mechanics liens, mortgage liens, abstracts of judgments, first position, second position liens. Get the loan details and contact information for all of them, and get a third-party authorization on file for all of them. Okay, you've got 5 liens on this property. I want a third-party authorization for all of them. Dear Chase Bank, I want Daniel Moore to talk to you on my behalf. Dear Wells Fargo, I want Daniel Moore to talk to you on my behalf. Dear AC Company, I want Daniel Moore to talk to you on my behalf. Get the third-party authorization for all liens on file. Okay? So moving forward, setting the expectations. Clarify who is on my team. and who's going to be working with them. I find this to be very important. If I'm handling acquisitions and I've got somebody else doing the transaction coordination, then I need to introduce to them who my transaction coordinator is going to be. Okay? Who is my transaction coordinator? And then set the expectations of what my transaction coordinator is going to be from there. Who's my title company? Who's the escrow officer? Who's the escrow officer's assistant? What's their phone numbers? When should they expect a phone call from the title company? Because a scared seller, an uninformed seller, is going to take a contract from someone else. Even if they have one with you, they're going to contract with anybody that they feel confident with. And if they contract with you and they don't hear from you during this 5 days, they're going to freak out. You need to be in constant communication, preferably written, with the seller. Okay? Give seller all points of contacts they will need. Here's Shyla Trout with Alamo Title Company, also known as Capital Title now. Phone number 817-377-9009. Confirm all closing times and requirements for moving out. I will reiterate it back to them. It's like, okay, we are agreeing. And I do agree with this after the contract was signed, because sometimes they forget that fast. You are agreeing. You will be out 5 days after the close of this property, correct? All right. What else are we going to do? Boom. Remind, assure your assistants. Okay, remind them they're not in this alone. This isn't paperwork, I'm gone. You should likely hear from me, especially if we're doing a 5-day closing. You'll likely hear from me or my transaction coordinator every single day of this process. If you have any questions at all during this process, feel free to reach out to me personally and or the transaction coordinator. If it does have anything to do, and let me move that, let me rewind that back for a little bit of cleanup. If you do have a transaction coordinator on your team and you're handling acquisitions, I would try to make this handoff to the TC clean. And not keep yourself in the middle of the loop, although you might want to, but you don't want to get into a middle of he said, she said. Try to keep the communication flowing through one question, because if the seller's calling you for questions and the TC doesn't know about it, the TC is going to struggle. It's best to keep all that communication tied back into a singular point of contact. Okay? The next piece, call the bank. I'll do that right there with the seller at the house, and I'll get the seller to ask these questions while we're on speakerphone. Okay. And now this seems like a lot, but this is why these appointments take me a little bit longer. While I'm there, I've got the contract. The very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the bank on the phone. Okay. Request the payoff or reinstatement right there. This is an important step. Write this down, highlight it, circle it, put a star next to it, underline it. Right there at the appointment, get the seller to request the payoff or reinstatement. Right there immediately. Okay. How to send the third-party authorization request. Okay, let's start with that one. How to send the third-party authorization. Most banks are going to have what they're going to call an imaging department. An imaging department is a fax machine and or an email where all documents coming into the bank are going to go to. There is a person that is paid to take those faxes and image it into the bank's internal system. That's their imaging department. So if I send a fax over, and almost always these are faxes, sometimes an email, but from my experience, almost always faxes, I'm going to send that fax over. It is often 3 to 5 business days, up to a week, before anything I send in will be imaged into the system. Okay? Think about this. If I've got a 5-day close and I'm trying to get a foreclosure stopped and I need a payoff ASAP and I need to speak with the bank and I send my third-party authorization in and it's going to take 5 days just to get the third-party authorization on file, am I going to be able to talk to the bank during that time? No. So what am I going to do? In addition to not only asking how do I need to send in my third-party authorization, I'm going to request right then and there a verbal third-party authorization. I'm going to have the seller say, hey, I'm on the phone. I've got Daniel Chad Moore right here with me right now. Would you please add him as a temporary authorized agent on my account for the next 5 days? Bam. You bypass some of that required imaging, and you now have your name on file to communicate and talk with the bank. All right? Confirm sale date for foreclosure. I want to figure that out from the bank right then and there. I want to know from the bank, what is the date of the foreclosure confirmed? I have seen paperwork that says one thing, and then talking to the bank, you find out something different. Always confirm it right there. Okay? Who to send the information to and where? It's a very important one. All right. And that is the end of the slideshow. So that is what I'm doing at the house. That's what I'm doing on the appointment. And that is not the end of the foreclosure training series. Do remember this is a 4-part series. This is part 3 of 4, but that is the end of the 3rd part. For those of you that have seen 1 and 2 and 3 and or just 3, give me a little bit of feedback so far. Do you feel like your knowledge on pre-foreclosures has gone up a little bit? Are you getting some key nuggets taken away from this? Like some of the things that I know that I'd probably like to have learned throughout this when I first got started would have been some of the paperwork and or some of the marketing strategies, some of those types of things. Give me some of the nuggets that you were able to pull out of this class over the past 3 weeks. Remember, part 4 of this training series coming next week on Wednesday, where I'll finalize how to actually stop it, my communications with the banks, my communications with the sellers, how I'm going to dispo the property, how I'm going to fund the property if I'm going to take it down myself. These are all the things that I'm going to discuss on next week's class. So going through, we've gotten the contract, we've gotten on the phone call with the bank. Now I'm going to go through everything that's going to happen from this point moving forward on the next training class, which would be 8 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time next Wednesday. Okay, so set your calendars, mark yourself a reminder, but let me know what were some of the key things that you learned from this, and or do you have any questions to walk away from on this, because I'm going to make myself available for another 5-10 minutes to answer questions, and then I'm going to head on out of here. I got a dry mouth, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, and I've got a wonderful, beautiful family heading downstairs that I need to go spend some time with. I've been working from the start of this day to the end of this day, and I have not taken much of a break at all during the middle, so I'm tired. How's everybody doing? Okay. Oh, I'm reading comments right now. Vortex, you're asking if this will be on a replay. Yes. So after this is done, just Google or search YouTube for Propelio Foreclosure, and you'll find not only these 3 videos that we've already recorded, but probably dozens of others as well. Yes, so Vortex, you've got this. Bill, I'm glad that you've got to see all 3 parts. What was your favorite part of this so far? Oh, Dulce, thank you so much. Dulce just sent us some YouTube money. Thank you so much for that. Very much appreciated. Any other questions? I'm just gonna chill out here if I don't get too many questions coming in, I'm gonna chill out here till 10:30, and then I'm gonna bounce. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. But all that to be said, I appreciate chilling here with y'all. I've got probably about 80 of y'all watching right now. Please help me out with shares. Please help me by word of mouth. One of the things that I obviously do get out of this is Propelio.com is a website resource for you to get pre-foreclosure leads from. You can also get MLS comps. You can get national lead lists like high equity, low equity, no equity, unknown equity, absentee owners, tired landlords, absentee owners out of state. You can get all types of lead lists from Propelio, up to 5,000 leads a day. That's 150,000 leads a month you can get out of Propelio. Not only do you get that, you get national national MLS comps. You get a driving for dollars application called Propelio Mobile that can skip trace and send direct mail. And you also get custom websites for your business. So if you do not have a website or professional emails for your business yet, and you're a little nervous about, hey, seller, I got a third-party authorization. Can I email it to you? And you're using your I'm Daniel Chad Moore at hotmail.com. That's not very professional. So if you want a professional email, website, MLS comps, lead lists, and a driving for dollars app that does skip tracing and direct mail, hit up Propelio.com, 14-day free trial. No credit card required. 14 days, all you need is an email. If you think I'm lying, go check out Propelio.com right now, hit the register button, type in an email, and you've got access to everything I just told you, including the Propelio mobile app. Download the Propelio mobile app right now. That's not hard to do. So if you want to show me some love for this, download the app. Just try a free trial. That doesn't cost you anything. If you want to show me even more love, spread the love. Tell your friends about it. Let people know about Propelio. Let people know what Propelio does. Let people know that Propelio's over here doing some serious education for these people. The stuff that I've taught you has not only cost me over $100,000 in education and mentorships, but it's cost me 12 years of my life to learn. This isn't something I learned overnight. This was 5, 6, 7 years of struggling. But that 5, 6, 7 years of struggling resulted on the backside of becoming a multimillionaire. Real estate has provided more millionaires in the world than just about any other asset class. Until recently, real estate was the #1 vehicle for creating wealth. Recently, in the last 2 decades, being replaced by software. So if you are interested in becoming wealthy, you might as well follow the path that has allowed most people to achieve financial freedom, and that is real estate. So all of that is there. Got a question here from Alex Reed. Is the third-party authorization the same as power of attorney? No, sir. Power of attorney gives you the rights to basically operate on that seller's behalf. The third-party authorization is giving you the right to communicate to the bank on the seller's behalf. A little bit different. I'm not positive if a Google search could find that, but if you stick around and you pay attention to class number 4, I'll go ahead and release some of these pre-foreclosure documents on that next class. I'm not prepared right now. I didn't have any of that ready, but if y'all want some of these ancillary documents that I'm talking about, I'll share them on the next class. Third-party authorizations and things like that. So all of that's out there and available. Let me see here. Let me go check Facebook, see if I got any questions coming in on Facebook. Does Propelio cover other states than Texas? Yes, Propelio is nationwide. And for those, yeah, great over there on Edwin. Thank you. Edwin dropped a link down for Propelio Academy. I've got close to 50, 60 people still watching right now. Propelio.com/academy is education like you just received, broken down in a video format, step by step, and it is also free. So go check out Propelio.com/academy, a 100% free resource to get education like you just received tonight in a very similar fashion, step by step, actionable education. Josie, thank you there. Don, if so, who is a good one in DFW you can recommend? Do you keep a mobile notary on hand for things like power of attorneys? Yes. Jay and Marsha Coleman have a little remote notary service that they do, so just find them on Facebook. Jay and Marsha Coleman. They're actually here in the Propelio group. So just reach out and just say, hey, mobile notaries, Jay and Marsha, can you help me out here? Okay. It is now 10:30. I do not see any other questions here on the live. So for everybody out there, give me some thumbs ups, give me some fires, give me some love, give me some likes over there on Facebook or on YouTube. I got 50-ish people watching and I've got 17 likes. Help me out with some more likes. I've got a bunch of people watching. Go out there, check out the Propelio website, sign up for a free trial. It takes nothing other than an email. Don't even have to have a credit card to sign up. During that time, you get to download some leads, run some comps, check out the Driving for Dollars app, set yourself up with a website and a professional email. All of that available at Propelio.com. Don't forget about Propelio.com/academy. And all of that's available to you. So 10:31 it is. I told you I'd be closing out at 10:30. Much love to all of y'all. I do this for a reason, and that's because I truly do love helping each and every single one of y'all. And it does bring some awareness to my company, Propelio. So if you want to pay me back at all, share the Propelio love, let people know about this, and y'all have a great day. Have a good one.